Happy Hump Day! Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on a Wednesday. Glad to have you with us. Going to be a fun one today. We keep prognosticating and predicting what Utah is going to do statistically as football season approaches. 8 days away now from kicking it off. Sammy Mora is going to stop by in about half an hour. We're also going to check in with Antonio Morales. Antonio was responsible for that the top programs of the last 50 years article that have not won a national championship. So we're going to get into all that and the latest and greatest of breaking news as it comes out. Let's have a discussion today, if you'll indulge me, in how important cohesiveness is when it comes to leadership in college athletics. We're seeing down in Provo right now, potentially a disconnect between the athletic director and the head coach, and that disconnect has to extend on some level to the financial arm of the athletic department. As convoluted as those structures are now in college sports, what you need is everybody pulling on the same rope. You need your NIL fund, your revenue share fund, the leadership there to understand the needs of the athletic department as a whole. The athletic department as a whole to understand the needs of its component parts, football being the main driver, men's basketball being second. Depending on which campus you're on, it could be women's basketball, softball, gymnastics, track and field, whatever. Could be kind of that third option. There are some places where it's baseball. I guess volleyball, potentially, if we're talking about the right school. Right now we have, yesterday we were discussing and ranting about the boomerang players. Shout out to whoever that was again who gave us the term boomerang instead of bounce back. We like boomerang much better.
Yeah, that was Lauren
Good
on
eye.
the email. Shout out Lauren.
Good eye, Lauren. We like boomerang player better, right? So yesterday, the Big Ten was making decisions on how to penalize bringing boomerang players onto a roster. The SEC was making the same decisions. The Big 12 and the ACC are going to make their own announcements on their stance on the matter. College football is in this really weird state of flux that nothing actually sticks. The last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you've had these massive changes and a hopeful settling, but then the sediment gets kicked up again 5 seconds later. And then, okay, that settles down, and now there's something else. Oh, okay, that one's going to settle down. Oh, now there's something else. And in all of this, leadership, being on the same page, is more important now than it ever has been. And I'm not living in this world of sunshine and rainbows where I expect an athletic director and a head football coach, or an athletic director and a university president and a head basketball coach to always be on the same page about everything. But it helps when you get your messaging right and when you understand the stance on the ground all the way up to the office. The SEC held a vote yesterday on whether or not to approve or disapprove of boomerang players. And according to reports, the decision to disallow was voted upon in unanimous agreement, 16-0. Hey, we are not going to accept this, which is fine and expected, and I think the best outcome for college football, except that vote was coming down from the powers that be, from the chancellors, the presidents at LSU, while their head coach is actively pursuing boomerang players in the portal and actively recruiting those guys out of the portal. Now, we're insulated from it because this is at LSU, okay? But it's an indicator, it is a dog whistle for bigger problems in college sports where the universities themselves are voting on something that on the same day, I mean, in real time, those conversations, I could envision they're happening at the same time, where Lane Kiffin's on a phone call with somebody. Hey, you know what? We're going to get injunctions for this. I know the Louisiana district judge who's going to allow this, and we're going to get a temporary restraining order, and everything's going to be fine. So why don't you head from Cleveland down here to Baton Rouge? Why don't you go from Seattle down here to Baton Rouge? I know you had a great game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a couple of sacks there. That was preseason, doesn't count. Why don't you get in a U-Haul and grab your stuff and head on over here to Baton Rouge? That phone call is happening at the same time that some stuff shirts are sitting in a conference room saying we all disagree that, or we all agree that this is bad for college sports, right? We all have decided that we don't want to flirt with this. And the decision is made to vote in accordance with what the Big Ten has already announced as of last evening, what the SEC, what Tennessee's going to do, what Florida's going to do. All right, you know what? We're going to punish this. And the penalties are severe. The Big Ten and the SEC, I guess it was the SEC kind of copycatting the Big Ten, which gives me a perverse pleasure that just comes from having watched the SEC dominate for so long and being at the top of the heap for so long. It's fun to watch them squirm and have to play copycat and have to be second fiddle. I don't know why, but it is. The Big Ten announced that, hey, if you allow boomerang players to come onto your roster, if you recruit boomerang players, the penalty is 50% of the games, your head coach is going to be suspended. 50% of your operating budget for basketball, for football, for softball. I don't know what kind of boomerang situation there is in softball right now. Maybe someone from the Utah Talons is getting phone calls.
Yeah, no Talons players allowed on Tennessee's roster, okay?
Cindy Ball Malone doesn't want to lose anybody to – wait, where is she coaching in college now?
UCF. Big 12 hasn't ruled on it yet, OC.
Okay, Coach Bear, Cindy Ball Malone, if she ends up recruiting a bunch of Utah Talons back to the UCF Knights, now we know there's potentially a vote coming in the Big 12 as well.
Coach Bear would never do that. She would never do anything so unethical.
The point is, the penalties are harsh, punitive, excessive in the eyes of some people, and LSU's chancellor, president, king, whatever they call him down there in Baton Rouge, said, yes, I will approve this. I will get on board with this. While his own football program is committing the violation that is punishable by a 50% suspension of your budget and your head coach's availability to coach games.
Your Grace, how do you feel about your head coach doing this?
Well, it would be if they're a king, they're a Mardi Gras king down there in Louisiana, right?
So no, it's gotta be Game of Thrones, Your Grace stuff.
It's got to be kind of a Creole accent if you're going to do it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so channel your inner Gambit from X-Men and give me the Creole accent. Do you know what that sounds like?
I'll work on that.
Ed Orgeron.
Oh yeah, okay.
Just James,
Your Grace.
Pull up an AI engine of sorts.
Go Tigers! I gotta say that to get the Ed Orgeron going.
It's the only way you could get your Ed Orgeron impersonation working.
Your Grace,
you got to say,
"What do you think about this?"
You got to gargle some broken glass and gravel, and then you got to say, "Go Tigers," and then you're almost there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the SEC and by the way, I think it's important for me to state this is what is best for college sports. This is a continuation of the conversation we had at the top of the show yesterday. This is the best thing to do for college sports, disallowing professionals from coming back to compete at a lower level of professionalism because it isn't amateur anymore. It's the right thing to do. You should not play in an NFL game, preseason or otherwise, and then come back onto campus and steal somebody else's spot, take somebody else's roster limit. Because remember, it's not about how many scholarships you have anymore. It's not about how many walk-ons you can allow. It's you've got 100 spots, 105 spots, and everyone's getting paid.
It's another place where two things can be true at the same time, right? OC, like so many people for a long time have said it is wrong that players have such, transfer restrictions, obviously not be able to make any kind of money given how much revenue their teams are generating for the NCAA and for their schools. It's also true that pros shouldn't play college sports, right? It's also true that there should be some reasonable restrictions on player movement in college because, one, is it not also true, even though we have completely abandoned it if we ever cared about it, we completely abandoned any care about the academics, it's also true that, hey, like, moving around schools every year, that's not going to help you get your degree. And that should be important too, right? Like, all those things are true. People like the representatives for these players, coaches like Lane Kiffin, and every coach in the country that wants to better their roster and use any edge that they can that's, somewhat legal, they would probably be telling you right now, well, aren't you for players getting paid? Aren't you for more players' rights in college football? Like, obviously, all of us would say, yes, we are, but this is still wrong. There still needs to be some reasonable regulation on this, and right now that's not what we have.
It's a reflection of a lot of other things that have happened in society as of late where
it really is.
And I'm don't worry, James, I'm not going to get political here. But it's, we this excessive permissiveness, this you've got to accept everything. Everything is okay. Like, let everyone live their truth. The truth is the truth. And the truth is, like, it's better for college sports to not have professionals, seasoned professionals, or even like borderline professionals who have explored that opportunity, who have been turned away from the pro leagues, who have exhausted their eligibility. You shouldn't get to sue and get your way with everything.
I even think, like, we talked about Trinidad Chambliss. Is this going to be his 6th year of NCAA football that he's going to have, or is it going to be his 7th year, whatever it is?
What was it? Cam McCormick, the Oregon/Miami tight end, he played 9 years. He Van Wildered this whole thing.
Yeah.
And look, I get it. When guys have a plague of injuries, I feel sympathetic.
We saw that with Cam Rising. Like, he played 7 years of college football, but 3 of those were lost to injury, and 1 to because he transferred before the automatic transfer
and
rule.
At the end of the day, you should be allowed to play your 4 years. Now you're 5 years. And I think we're going to get a situation, because right now the rule is you got 5 years consecutively from the time you turn 19 or you graduate high school. The exceptions for that are going to be rewinding all the way back to the old exceptions, right? Church service will interrupt that. Military service will interrupt that, right? So there's going to be a time when a bunch of people are complaining that, once again, BYU, and to a lesser extent Utah and Utah State, and Stanford usually has a few return missionaries, there's going to be coaches complaining like, hold up. I thought we did this universal thing where you had to be done playing by the time you were 23 or 24. That guy's 25 with 3 kids. Why is he playing, right? These fights will be repicked. And BYU will be at the center of a controversy in the next year or two because of that, because everyone else is feeling like, hold on a second. I thought we were leveling the playing field here. I will say this. Until Indiana won with a bunch of older players last year, there's not one person, coach, GM, that said it's better if you have a bunch of older guys. Otherwise, Alabama would have been doing this for 30 years. Alabama would have been sending people on church missions with whatever faith that they were attached to and having them come back 2 years later. If that were considered an advantage in college sports in the 1990s or the early 2000s, BYU would not have been the only team with a bunch of 24-year-olds on it.
Well, I mean, yeah, like BYU would have been more of a national power than they've been. Utah, which until recently has had a lot of LDS and return missionaries on the roster, still have some, but not near as many. They would have been a lot more of a national power in years past.
Yes,
because they already use this. Utah State.
If age was an advantage that meant that much in college sports, then your point stands. Our local universities, would have had a significant edge over everybody else. It wasn't thought of that way. It's not going to be thought of that way, I don't think, in the next couple of years. But there's plenty of lawyers out there who are going to look at it and say, wait a second. So my guy got injured for 3 years, and that guy was 2 years on a church mission. My guy doesn't get to play. That guy does? No. And then we're going to have this whole thing again. But it's why the cohesiveness of the messaging and why the same page mentality for really everyone in the sport, which is near impossible to achieve now, is so important for competitive balance, is so important for harmony, is so important for, thank goodness we have in just a couple of days real games being played, and I won't be coming on and ranting about these rule changes and injunctions against rule changes and things like that for the next at least 12 weeks. Well, at least I hope I won't. But right now, so Big Ten came down and announced this, right? And Indiana brought back 2 of their best players from last year. Arizona brought back 2 of their best players from last year. Not as professional bounce backs, but as guys who did not have a 5th year of eligibility, and then they said, all right, I'm getting a 5th year of eligibility. Is someone going to tell Curt Cignetti, you can't have that guy? Or you can't have those 2 guys? Right now, that will require a temporary restraining order. I think they'll get it because it's not what the Big Ten just decided on. It's not individuals that signed pro contracts and then came back. It's guys who thought they were graduating, hoped that they would get a pro contract, and didn't, right? They already had agents from their college days and things like that. Is somebody could tell Brent Brennan at Arizona the same thing? They got their leading rusher from last year back and their best defensive lineman from last year back on Arizona quietly, because those individuals were like bubble-type players and didn't get the look that they wanted to, didn't have the pro day or the combine that people expected them to, so their cup of coffee in the NFL was not ever granted, but they're back. Are we going to extend this? Hey, you were a pro, but now you're not good enough to be a pro, and so you can't come back. Are we going to extend that for all the guys who it was just an eligibility question? As much as all of us at the University of Utah, in the University of Utah circle, wanted for Alex Jensen to be able to get this W and just hold on to the fact that, hey, Noam Yakov, man, super legit player, had opportunities to go a lot of different places. He chose the University of Utah. This is fantastic. We all wanted that win to stay with this basketball program. So desperately in need of one, especially on the player personnel front. But if you take off your crimson-colored glasses and you look at it, what it is, it's a guy who's played 4 years of professional basketball. So when the NCAA says, no, I'm not allowing this, you kind of have to be like, ugh. Well, I guess it makes sense because 4 years of pro basketball is a lot of pro basketball, even if it is European, even if it is an Israeli league. Now, your reasonable acceptance of that is going to fly out the window when you look at, again, LSU just signed today an Israeli big man who's 7'3", who's been playing pro basketball in Israel.
Oh, is it interesting? And Noam Yakov, he's also Israeli. Interesting. Like,
maybe the problem is he's not 7'3".
What is the what's the difference here?
BYU's got the Jackson Kohler thing going on. Arizona's got a guy. Kentucky's got a guy. There's a bunch, right? So if you're Utah and you look at your case in a vacuum, you're probably like, oh, man, we tried. We took a swing. The upside was there. It was worth the time, the energy, the effort, and the money we spent on this. Okay, we'll accept that. When you look at it in a vacuum, you can be reasonable about it. But you don't live in a vacuum. You live in a place where your conference opponents are going to be allowed to have former pro players on their roster, where you played against a team last year who had pro players on their roster. Now, is it one of those situations where if Jackson Kohler ends up not being good at BYU for some reason, we're like, oh, okay, it's fine. But he's going to be good. He's not going to be like this Abdullah Ahmed guy that they had last year.
Well, yeah, Kohler's a proven product in the college level, OC. Like, he didn't do much for the Jazz Summer League, but he's a double-digit scorer, almost double-digit rebounder for Michigan State. Like, for a nearly blue blood program in college basketball. He's one of the best big men in the Big Ten.
So let me ask you this. There's at least one BYU fan that listens to this show. Text us every now and again.
Yeah, resident BYU fan, Darren, shout out to you.
877-353-0700 if you're out there listening or anyone else is out there listening. If you're a Utah basketball fan, the university has not decided to pursue any kind of legal intervention so that Noam Yakov can play at the University of Utah, to our knowledge, right? If the SEC is going to do it and the Big Ten is going to do it and maybe even BYU in your conference is going to do it, would you support the University of Utah seeking help from a judge, from a district court, from somebody to give a temporary restraining order against the NCAA or against the Big 12 Conference or against whatever? Maybe you won't have to. Maybe Brett Yormark is, like we said yesterday, maybe he's sitting in his office and he's going, could I finally do something to get an edge over the Big Ten? I don't think that's the right way to do it, but maybe he's talking to the university presidents and chancellors in the Big 12 and saying, hey, if we can be the only landing spot for these individuals, that'll give our teams some kind of competitive advantage.
Let's do it. Yeah, and he's behaved like enough of a wild card, OC, that my tongue-in-cheek suggestion that might happen, or that maybe that's what's something he should do when I made that tongue-in-cheek yesterday. He's behaved like enough of a wild card that might just happen. I doubt it.
I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it'd be the right thing to do.
I don't think it's the right thing to do. I also think that the Big 12 can't get away with it.
Yeah,
I think that the Big 10 and the SEC and the other powers that are more influential will just be like, all right, fine, we're not playing you guys then.
Right.
We're not going to schedule you. We're going to boycott you. You're not going to be allowed at a place at our party anymore. Because what they're going to do, what they're willing to do in the SEC and in the Big 10 with their own member institutions is to suspend those head coaches for half of the year and to fine them aggressively and to pull voting rights from that university and that athletic department on conference-level issues. You lose your head coach for half a year. In the SEC's case, you lose 50% of the operating budget for your football team or your basketball team or your softball team or whatever, and you lose voting rights when everyone else gathers at the table and is talking about the future of college athletics and your place in it and their place in it, and they say all in favor, you don't get to vote.
Yeah, it's the 3 abstained kind of situation. It's unanimous with some left out.
Interestingly enough, the Big Ten doesn't have identical language on the actual fine, on the financial penalty with the SEC. But the way that it stands in both cases is that you get hit from a leadership standpoint and you get hit from a financial standpoint and you get hit from a voting influence standpoint moving forward. You're sanctioned aggressively by the league. We also saw this. This was the thing that we saw with the ghost transfer rule. And what did it do? It got rid of ghost transfers. It effectively ended the trend trend is too strong of a word. It closed the loophole for the ghost transfer thing. It was the first enforcement proposed in many, many years in any league that I think did what it was intended to do. Remember when the NBA,
at least for now.
Remember when the NBA came out and they're just like, we're so anti-flopping that we're going to impose player fines for flopping. And then like Dwayne Wade paid $5,000 1 year because he flopped too much.
Yeah.
And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander still exists.
And yeah, now we have Shai, who is everyone's favorite guy to point out that flops too much. And Joel Embiid, his now teammate Jaylen Brown, called him out for flopping too much in their playoff series. Yeah, it didn't do anything. I do, as an aside, I do love the college what NCAA men's basketball has done with flopping, where they make it a technical foul. Like we deem you flopped, it's 2 free throws for the other team. I don't know why the NBA can't do something like that.
That would be that'd be more punitive in the NBA. And of course, the technical fouls thing, if you get too many technical fouls, that then results in a suspension.
Yeah.
And
it's probably too punitive to be fair, OC, but like
the reason the NBA doesn't
help
do it,
the problem pretty quickly.
The reason the NBA doesn't do it is because the Players Association would never agree to it.
Right. They have to have the players agree.
Because the players would just be like, wait a minute. So if I flop 10 times and get 10 technical fouls, then I lose money? No, man.
Yeah.
Because I'm suspended? No. Not happening.
College, and as you've illustrated the last couple of days, especially college basketball, they don't have to. The NCAA can just be like, unilaterally, we're putting in this rule. There's no players association they have to bargain with to put in rules. Football, you do those things. Nowadays, you might get enough lawyers to say, actually, that's not going to stand. Basketball, that's not happening.
So the SEC seems they're going to be a little more punitive financially than the Big Ten. Interestingly enough, the fine print doesn't really talk about overseas professionalism. That's going to be something that has to be incorporated here. That's going to still remain a gray area because the Big Ten sanctions and the SEC sanctions are mentioning the NBA, the WNBA, the G League, the NFL specifically. So if you're a pro basketball player in China, if you're a pro basketball player in Australia, in New Zealand, in Israel, are the rules going to be different? Is it going to be the sliding scale that has existed in NCAA circles for the last decade or so? All of these things are going to have to be addressed at some point. Our resident BYU fan said, I kind of zoned out when you talk about this type of stuff because the goalposts are in a different place every single day, and none of it makes any sense. And you're right. It's starting to feel a little bit like doing radio in the COVID era. I was doing Pac-12 radio at the time, and it was it was a bizarro world Twilight Zone frustration where you would come on the air. We would literally come on the air on a Monday, and it'd be like, okay, so Cal versus Oregon State this weekend. Here's how it looks. This is going to be crazy, all right? They're only playing 6 games this year. This is really important. And then we'd come on the air on a Wednesday, and we'd be like, okay, so we talked about it on Monday, but that game's not going to happen now because Cal had contact tracing, and they have to suspend their entire team. They don't have enough of an offensive line because somebody tested positive for COVID. Reports are that nobody is actually sick. No one actually feels bad, but we can't play the game anyway, right? It was this weird thing that you had to move the goalposts to go along with this text every single day, every single week, because college sports didn't know what they were doing relative to the whole COVID thing. We've entered that realm of absurdity with this eligibility stuff. And before the eligibility stuff, it was the transfer stuff. And before the transfer stuff, it was the can you pay stuff. And somewhere in between all of that, it was the, okay, we decided you can transfer during this window and you can get paid, but you can only get paid if we approve the way you're getting paid and the reason you're getting paid. Oh, and by the way, we don't have enough employees to figure out if you should get paid or not. So now we're going to stop you from getting paid and wait, the universities are still going to pay you because they have a legal agreement that they have to pay you and they can't wait on us. Like, all of this happened in the last 9 months of college sports. 4234, which trips me out every time because those are the last 4 of my phone number as well.
Hold on. This guy says he's a BYU fan. OC, Marriott School of Business graduate. Are
no,
you a closet BYU
that.
fan?
I'm not texting my own show. Although I should maybe to increase engagement. I'm the other BYU fan that always listens. Good show, by the way. Thanks for saying that. Feels there's a big difference between 4 years of professional basketball and a few summer league games. However, I'm totally fine if both can play this year.
He's right about there is a huge difference between that.
Is there? Is it? Okay, so
I think there is.
if you play in Israeli basketball, okay, an Israeli pro league, there are 16-year-olds that play in that league, right? I mean, Noam Yaakov was a 16-year-old playing in that league. Is that anything close to an NBA basketball game? No.
I mean,
is it anything close to an NBA summer league game? Still no.
Yeah, from a talent standpoint, but when you're talking about 4 years versus a handful of games.
Look, yes, but also no, because what are we doing here? We're talking about moving goalposts.
Yeah.
Right? The pro leagues that exist in some of these other countries, first of all, I can only speak from a novice perspective on what the true value of the top Israeli players is, okay? Are they as good as what Jackson Kohler played against in the Big Ten the last couple of years? Probably not, right? Are they as good as what he played against even for a couple of games in an NBA Summer League? Certainly not. Is 4 years comparable to 2 weeks ever? Not really, right? But what we're talking about here is an apples to pineapples comparison. It's basketball, it's pro basketball, but no one has ever confused a pineapple for an apple. No one is ever going to confuse NBA anything with Israeli Pro League anything.
Yeah.
It's just like, and again, I'm not even informed enough on how good that league is to tell you whether or not 4 years in it is even equivalent to like junior college ball. Well, it might be way better than that. It might be as good as our best high schools here are in the United States. So if we're talking about an absolute ruling on, hey, you cannot play pro basketball at all, which is what the Big Ten and the SEC have done. They said, no, you sign a contract, you cannot play. You go and you flirt with these teams, you do this thing, you don't withdraw your name from a draft, you are done in college sports. That is an absolute line. And they're going to pull your coach for half the games if he recruits you. Okay, that's aggressive. I appreciate how definitive and punitive it is. And now you're going to do it with a Greek league or an Israeli league or an Egyptian league or a New Zealand league. I really don't know if we're talking about anything close to comparable.
Yeah, and just to add more context to it, you remember Jonathan Tavernari, former BYU player. He was on with us during the BYU basketball season last year. And he mentioned overseas there are junior-level contracts and there are senior-level contracts. And yes, you're getting paid in both instances, so technically you're a professional player, but the junior level are those high school-age kids playing against other high school-age kids in these pro league academies. The senior level are the grown men playing, their equivalent to the NBA, right? And so there's that comes into play here too as we try to wade through all the nuance. I don't know the nature of Noam Yaakov's contract the last couple of years, but I'm going to guess if he's been in that league since he was 16, it was probably not a senior level contract, right? And that was kind of the line that the NCAA had always drawn up until this point is like, okay, junior level contracts don't count as pro. You can still be considered an amateur. You can still play college basketball.
So if Luka had wanted to come play for the University of Kentucky,
I think he could have. Yeah.
That's kind of silly because he's Luka, right? But do you treat someone who's not Luka, who played in the exact same team as Luka, the same way? That's what we're talking about here. There's no uniformity in the enforcement. I appreciate the text, though, because it's important to say this. 4234 says, however, I'm totally fine if both can play this year, meaning he's saying if my team can have a pro player, your team can have a pro player too. And that's where some of this argument is going to come in, because Lane Kiffin at LSU is going to go, hold on a minute. I'll accept this as long as nobody else has one of these boomerang players. because that was his whole argument in the first place. If I don't sign him, somebody will. We're overdue. We got to take a break. Sammy Mora from Ute Zone is going to join us on a Ute Zone Wednesday. That's next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in on a Ute Zone Wednesday. Our good friend Sammy Mora, Utah insider over there at Ute Zone. Hi, Sammy. How are you?
I'm doing a lot better now that I haven't been bumped for your show in favor of Morgan Scally.
Wow. Airing a grievance here. And you know what? I'll own that. We had Morgan Scally on as the head coach of the program last week, and Sammy had already agreed to come on, and we had to tell Sammy that she was bumped. So you know what? I'm sorry, I guess.
Hey, I'm just teasing. Morgan's one of the few people that I would be like okay with it. If it was like some random Joe Schmo, I would be more offended. But Morgan, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, so for Morgan, you accept it. For the coordinators, would it be okay?
Yeah, I'll take the coordinators. I'll take Devin, but that's where I draw the line.
So, like if I'm like
other than that.
if I'm like, hey, Sharif Shaw's coming on, you're like, no.
Oh no. Sharif also gets a pass. Like
Okay.
any of the coaches get a pass. Certain players, or not certain players, all the players get a pass. But if it's like Dave from the corner store, then I'm gonna be a little bit upset.
We would never do that to you, Sammy. Come on, you know that. All right, so college sports continues to be insane as we are 8 days away from Utah kicking off its season. We had an opportunity to catch up with Morgan Scalley last week. He seemed like he was pleased with the progress in camp. Obviously, they wrapped up camp over the weekend. You were up there every day getting sound, talking to people. From what you were able to see, the limited amount, and what you were able to glean from your conversations, was this first camp under Morgan Scalley the success that it needed to be?
I think, yeah. Even Morgan said yesterday during his scrum that he felt it was successful. They figured out the depth at certain positions. They stayed injury-free. They established the leadership of this team with captains and the leadership council. So I think it was a success. I know that people are still a little bit worried and a little bit like skittish about the offensive line and the defensive tackle room. But I honestly think that deep down, I think these coaches know who's going to start, but they're just trying to not show their hand, which honestly, in one aspect, I'm okay with. Because I know people are like, well, you work in sports media, you should want to know every little thing that happens. I'm like, but on the other hand, I like to be surprised. I like to go to a game and not know what every single play on the call sheet is. Like, I like to be kind of, it's like a journey. I like to be surprised. I like to just ride the flow of a game and stuff. And so I think they know exactly who all 22 starters are going to be, but they're just not showing their hand, which I'm okay with.
So the number one question has been the starting five on the offensive line, right? And we had Morgan on. We talked to Devin. We talked, hey, do you know who it's going to be? Do you feel like you have a five that you could put out there? And then Jordan Gross comes out and says, you know what? We might actually have 10 guys that I trust to play. That's 10 is too many almost, Sammy. Like, now I'm wondering how genuine he's being in that assessment. But you just said you think they know exactly who the starting five is on the offensive line because you think you know who all 22 starters are. Who would those guys be?
Well, I want to talk about the Gross thing, and then I'll answer your question. I think he was mainly referring to he has two lines. He has his ones and he has his twos, which I think is good because the goal for this team is to be up big again last year, big this year like they were last year. And I think that having those two starting fives, I think is a good thing. I think that helps because especially you're not going to be in that position again next year where you're like, oh gosh, we need to find all five starters if you have guys that are getting experience. But my take has been and continues to be that I think the starting offensive line is Zeraway Williams, Solatoa Moiai, Alex Harrison, Keith Olson, and Cedric Jefferson. That's been my take since the beginning of camp. There were a couple of days in camp where I was like, there might be some flexibility at the guard spots, but then and Jefferson at tackle, but like now I just my confidence is kind of building on that. But also like if I'm wrong, I'm not going to be one of those people that like gets really upset and defensive about it. Like I'm going to admit it. Like obviously we just see a small snippet of what actually happens during the week, and you know, my 20 minutes that I get to see is nothing compared to what Morgan and McGiven and Jordan has seen during this time. But that's been my take on the offensive line, and I'm still rolling with it until I am proved otherwise.
A couple other big bodies have been a major topic of conversation throughout camp, and I think will remain so during the season. Semi Taulanga and Sione Motuapuaka, the Rhinos. At least we think it's just going to be those two that get the bulk of those touches as the Rhino backs. Seems like their role could expand even further than we gave it credit. You know, they were talking about it at camp. They were talking about it at practice yesterday. Kevin McGiven gave those guys credit for their development, not just as lead blockers effectively. So what can you tell us about the Rhino packages and how big a part of this offense they're going to be?
I think we're starting to get a clearer picture on what their role is. I mean, Morgan's talked about how he wants to see the ball handed off to them. I don't think Morgan would say that if that's not in the cards. You have Luke Wells and McGivern saying that they're going to have an expanded role this fall, which I think leads to more receiving the ball, more rushing the ball, less just blocking, like we saw last year. I know Semi had a couple of receptions last year, but that role looks to be increasing this year. I don't know exactly what the packages look like. I don't know exactly what a play for them is going to entail, but I do think that we'll see them a little bit more and a little bit in different situations than we did last year. Semi said that his personal goal is to score 4 touchdowns this year, and I don't think he would have given us that number if there's not a sizable package that's built out for both him and Sione.
Sammy Moore is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things Utah football as the season is right around the corner. Week 0 games this weekend, and, of course, Thursday night, Utah against Idaho to kick off the season. You alluded to this. We talked about it on the show yesterday. They did vote on and name their captains, and it's an interesting year because you have a couple of guys who have obvious, leadership qualities and a good relationship with their teammates, but aren't exactly like all-world producers, at least in terms of returning production. Lance Holtzclaw, we always thought was probably going to be voted a captain. I was a little bit more surprised by Trey Reynolds. Love seeing that because obviously he's a guy who's paid his dues. He's put in the work, special teams and backup role, and now he's a first-year full-time starter and already a captain. I think that's a big testament to the value he presents to this team in the locker room.
Yeah, I would say Trey and Nate Ritchie were the two that kind of surprised me a little bit. But we've heard so much about Trey over the last few weeks as just a leader. Like, I think it was Morgan said last week or the week before that Trey is one of those guys that he wants to make sure that everybody around him is doing what they need to do, and that he's really stepped up in that area this season. So looking back on it, it's not that big of a surprise, but I was surprised, Lance Holtzclaw wasn't on here. Jackson Benny wasn't on here. To a certain extent, I would even say someone like Scooby Davis wasn't on the captain's list. But I get it. These guys are the ones, again, it goes back to we're only seeing a small drop in the bucket compared to these coaches. And, again, this was voted on by the members of the team. So if anyone knows who is leading this team the best way, it's the guys on the team. And Morgan even said yesterday that there's not one guy who was voted to either the captain's group or the leadership council that was kind of like, I don't really know if I feel that way or if I agree with it. Like, every single guy on this list, according to Scally, deserves it. And so, it's one of those things where I think we on the outside just kind of have to accept it and roll. It is shocking that guys like Lance aren't on there, but at the end of the day, we don't know what's truly going on inside that facility with practices. But, Lance was on that. He is on that leadership council, so at least he's still in that leadership role.
Okay. The sack masters for this year's team. I put a poll out. We're trying to predict who's got what kind of production we're getting out of players, et cetera, et cetera. I've been doing some over-unders. I'll give you yesterday's also. We'll start with that one, and then I'll get to the guys who I think, I'm just to prep you, I'm going to ask you who you think the leading sack man is on this year's team. But the O block for the offensive line, brand new group, as we've already talked about. I set the over-under at 19.5 sacks surrendered by this group in the upcoming season. Last year was 14. You had 2 first-round tackles, obviously. You had experience in between those tackles. You had excellent guys on the offensive line. You had a mobile quarterback who was hampered by injury and not as escapable as normal. So last year was 14. Given that context, over or under 19.5 sacks surrendered for this Utah team. By the way, 19 or fewer is top 5 in the Big 12 Conference. It's top 27 in the country. More than that, and you're falling out of the top 5 in the conference, and you're out of the top 25 range nationally.
I'm going to say under, but, it's not going to be by a lot. I think it's going to be in that, 16 or 17 range. I think Solatoa Amoya and Keith Olson are 2 of the most underslept on guards probably in the Big 12 Conference. The 2 of them are so extremely good at blocking that interior of that offensive line. And, Zaraway and Cedric, I'm optimistic about the two of them. I've heard some really, really, really encouraging things about both of them from people I've talked to over the last couple of weeks. So I think it's going to be lower, but it's like under, but I don't think it's going to be like 10. I think it's probably going to be like 17 or 16.
Okay, now to the sack question. Who is the sack leader on this Utah football team in 2026? My options on the poll, and you could add somebody else if you want. Lance Holtzclaw currently leading the vote. Cash Dillon is in second place. I put Paul Fitzgerald on there because a healthy Paul Fitzgerald has a better single-season sack total than anyone else on this list. Yes, it was at Utah State, but it was a great year. He has not been 100% healthy at Utah. And then I put Ethan Day as the fourth option. And, of course, you can always say other and tell me who that is. So Holtzclaw, Dillon, Fitzgerald, Ethan Day, who leads this team in sacks?
See, my head is saying like Lance, but my like gut is telling me Ethan. Ethan just there's things that Inoke Breckerfield said this week that really stood out. Like he said that like you can't tell that Ethan has never that he's coming from the G5 ranks. Like he is wired in a way that makes it seem like he's always played at the P4 level. So I just think that he has what it takes to be the sack leader, but I also feel that like Lance also has that same capability. And the thing is both of those guys are very different pass rushers. Lance is more of the speed guy, and then Ethan's more of that like power guy. So I think it's one of those things where it's like on one hand I can see it going Lance, I could see it going Ethan, but I could also see it being Cash or Paul. There's just so much unknown about this end room, but I don't think that's like a bad thing that it's so unknown. I think it's more of a, okay, well, we have four guys that we think are more than capable of doing this. It's just a matter of who is it that gets the light clicked on first when we get into live game action. But I know that's kind of the biggest non-answer I could have given you, but it's between Lance or Ethan in my brain this year.
Okay, which week 0 game are you going to be sure to watch this weekend? Which one has the most interest for you?
I mean, well, I can watch Idaho on Friday night and get a nice early scout in, which is nice for me. Kind of like Morgan talked about, but I also like that TCU North Carolina game is kind of interesting for me. I'm trying to think of what else is on the schedule for this weekend, but
that's kind of it, honestly. USC's playing. It's not a great lineup this week 0, which it never is, right? But
yeah.
But
I just pulled it up. Yeah, I think that North Carolina TCU game and the Idaho game are probably going to be the two that I watch. Idaho's kind of up in the air. I'll probably be at a high school football game, so I might not be able to watch all of it. So I'll probably watch like a rerun or a highlight cut up. But yeah, week zero games are usually not like my thing. Like I like to get an early taste on football, but like there's never a game on the week 0 schedule that is like, oh my gosh, I need to watch it.
You're not grinding Weber State tape this weekend? I don't know. It's kind of messed up.
I mean, hey, I did tell Spence that I'm a football sicko, and I am, but like there's a time and a place. And, it's a long season, so.
Weber State, Northern Colorado on Friday night, right before Idaho Cal Poly. So all you sickos out there, that's your local interest lineup on the Friday night of week 0. Sammy, you're the best. Thanks so much again for your time. We'll chat again soon.
Sweet. Thanks, OC.
Sammy Mora from Ute Zone. If you're not already subscribed to Ute Zone now with On 3, you should be. The whole crew over there does a really good job giving you Utah content and keeping it fresh every single day. Big ups to Sammy Mora for once again hopping on with us.
And Ute Zone also has, you can be a message board genius by subscribing to Ute Zone too. If you aspire to be one of those guys.
I don't encourage that. I don't encourage.
No, it's a community though. It's not just content. It's a chance for you to connect with other Utes fans online, which is a great spot for that.
All right, I'm going to extend the question I just asked Sammy to all of you. 877-353-0700. Who is Utah's sack leader this coming season? Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, a couple sack-related stats here. Questions for you. 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. The over-under today, 7.5 sacks for Utah's leading sack man this coming season. Are you going over or under 7.5? The top three guys in the conference were all 10 and above last year. Romello Height, Jack Kelly, John Henry Daly, David Bailey. So top four guys. Height and Kelly tied with 10. John Henry Daly was second. David Bailey had 14.5 sacks. Everyone else in the conference had 7 or less. So 4 guys in the Big 12 conference, more than 7.5 last year. Everyone else in the conference, even really good players, with fewer than that. Utah obviously hit the over with their guy last year. Go to 2024. Van Fillinger had 6 sacks and was Utah's leading sack man in 2024. So it seems to go kind of like every other year where you have double digits, not. Double digits, not. So over under 7.5 sacks for whoever Utah's leading sack man is. And maybe the more important question, who is going to step up? Who is going to be that guy? I put the poll question out on Twitter. Lance Holtzclaw, Cash Dillon, Paul Fitzgerald, Ethan Day, and if you have an other, I want you to tell me who the other is. The only other I could see would be Ellis, Christian Ellis, shocking us, but he's a stand-up linebacker. I don't know how much he's going to, well, he's listed as one. I don't know how much he's going to line up out on the edge and rush the passers this year. Maybe he will. He's more of an interior linebacker, or has been more of an interior linebacker, which, of course, 2 of his brothers are excelling at in the NFL. And then his immediate older brother is more of a pass rush guy. That would be the only other I could imagine. You go tell me, or tell me on the text line, 877-353-0700, who leads Utah in sacks this season? And by extension, does that person have over or under 7.5 sacks on the year? We will revisit this question a little bit later on. Reminder to all of you, you should already have this number in your phone, 801-850-9100. Right now, $2,500 off, 10 windows or more. They're doing great deals on window coverings as well, and the financing options at Advanced Window Products have never been better. So you don't really have an excuse to not upgrade the windows on your home if you have a need. And if you don't know whether or not you have a need, if you're like, these windows they're not that old, but we got these aluminum frames, or we got some janky nylon frames or vinyl frames that don't really look that great, just give them a call, 801-850-9100. They'll come out there. They will deal with you honestly. They will tell you what's working on your house, what's working with energy efficiency, what's working against it. How can they beautify your home? How can they add a little resale value to your home? 801-850-9100, advancedwindows.com. As always, tell them OC sent you. The mayor of Sac Lake City, Nate Orchard, his business partner, Jake Weber, are going to take great care of you because that's what they do for everybody. So whether you know you need replacement windows or you're just kind of questioning whether or not now is the time, Advanced Window Products is the only call that you need to make. 801-850-9100. We'll come back with Antonio Morales of The Athletic talking about all things college football, including his article on the top teams to not win a national championship in the last 50 years. Remember, Utah was number 9 on that list. We'll get into all of it with Antonio in 3 minutes. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in Antonio Morales, National College Football Insider over at The Athletic. We got about 25 minutes on the show out of a great article he put out about the best programs of college football's last 50 years who have not been able to get over the hump and win a national championship. Utah, as a program, came in 9th on that list in the scoring criteria. Excited to talk to Antonio about that and much more. Antonio, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me. Just getting ready for the season to start on Saturday. It's going to be a fun week 0 slate that'll take us into week 1. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it as well. Interesting Big 12 matchup, or I shouldn't say Big 12 matchup, Big 12 showcase opportunity, TCU and North Carolina in Dublin. And obviously here in the Big 12 and Big 12 country, you know, there's this kind of like trepidation. There's this, hey, are we the third best conference in the country? Are we the fourth best conference in the country? Can we sneak in there in the top 2? Probably not. But how important is that game from the Big 12's perspective in your mind?
I think you want, especially it's against an ACC school. So it's one of the worst probably ACC programs in North Carolina right now. You don't, if you're the Big 12, and there's a lot of decent buzz about TCU this year and Jaden Craig, the Harvard transfer they have at quarterback. So if you want to kind of prove yourself and assert yourself as the third best program, as the third best conference, you don't want to lose a game to one of the lower half of the ACC type programs. So I don't think TCU will lose, but it's certainly a game you want to win.
I want to pick your brain a little bit about the article that came out in The Athletic, and obviously you were the mastermind behind, where you did grade out kind of the top programs that have not won a national championship in the last 50 years. What sparked this as an idea? Why did you want to do this piece?
Because I think it was just interesting last year. Indiana, obviously one of the most losingest programs in the history of college football, and they came in and won the national title. But I was just thinking about how many programs they skipped kind of in line that had been competitive for the national title over the past 20, 30 years, like Wisconsin, Oregon, other schools like that, Virginia Tech, TCU, schools that haven't won a national title in recent history, that have just been on the cusp, but never quite got there. And Indiana just kind of raced by them. And so that was one reason. And so some national title claims that were happening in the spring that I found pretty funny. Kind of made me want to look at national championships, who's won them, who hasn't, and kind of rank who the best programs without them are.
So Oregon came in number 1 on that list, and Oregon is a team that we're very familiar with here in Salt Lake City. You know, Utah and Oregon developed a nice little back and forth in some championship games and some big-time games when they were both members of the Pac-12 conference. I did radio for 6 years with a former Oregon Duck, right? So Oregon's been kind of part of the Utah football fabric for a little bit of time here, and it's fascinating to watch this team with all those financial resources and all this great track record in recruiting still chasing, right? And I think that's kind of the point of why they're number 1 on your list. They have not yet won that national title, but they've been oh so close and in that conversation for really a couple of decades now. When you look at what Dan Lanning's got on his roster this year, on his coaching staff this year, Uncle Phil Knight is getting older and spending more and more to try to see his Ducks achieve greatness before he's done. Is this a year that you could see Oregon finally getting off of your list and finally taking home a national championship?
Yeah, I don't know if they will, but I think they're certainly capable of it. I feel like I believe in Oregon more now than I did during the Chip Kelly, Mario Cristobal years. Chip Kelly years, I just didn't believe they had enough along the line of scrimmage to get it done. And the Mario Cristobal years, I think Mario Cristobal is a better head coach now than he was at Oregon. We saw him go into Utah. I remember 2021 where they played Utah twice and got creamed both games. They got smashed pretty good in both times. So I just didn't think the staff was there for them to win the national title yet. I think Dan Lanning's put pretty much everything together except winning the national title. Obviously, they're the number 1 seed and ran into a juggernaut Ohio State team 2 years ago, and last year they had two losses, and they're both the national championship team in Indiana. So I think they have the recipes this year: the quarterback, receivers, running backs, defensive line, the back end of the defense. I think the one question I do have is the offensive line. I believe they lost three starters from that group last year, and we've seen that take down preseason teams, preseason like top 10 teams over the past few years, where people kind of overlook the offensive line. We saw that with Texas last year, where they had issues. So that's one area I kind of want to keep an eye on. But I think overall, it's probably the best roster that Dan Lanning's had since he's been at Oregon.
So our Utes, we're the flagship home of Utah football. Our Utes come in at number 9 on the list, and a lot of the accrual of points in your system has happened over the last 10, 15 years, I guess 20 years for the University of Utah. And I know you pay a lot of attention to roster construction, and that's something that matters so much in today's era of college football. Based on what you know on your scoring criteria and how these Utah teams were able to kind of like place themselves at number 9 on your list, and knowing what they're up against now with BYU spending the way they're spending, Texas Tech spending the way they're spending, the Big Ten, the SEC, etc. Can Utah stay kind of where they're at, one of these perennially respected top 25 level teams, or are they in trouble when it comes to making sure that they have the player personnel necessary to keep themselves in that conversation? Because before they were always a player development team. They'd get these 2-star athletes and turn them into 4 or 5-star producers, NFL draft picks. Now you got to pay those guys, even if you are the one that develops them, and they don't have the resources that some of these other teams do. So do you think Utah can stay where they're at nationally?
I think it's going to be more difficult. I'm not saying they can't do it, but I just think it's going to be harder for the reasons you said. In the past, in the Pac-12, it's not like Utah was the most resource school in the league. They're always fighting an uphill climb against the likes of USC, Oregon, Washington, schools like that. But like you said, they were able to keep their players for 3 or 4 years, and by the time they matured, they're able to beat those programs and give them a run for their money. Obviously, they won the Pac-12 twice, so that's just more difficult to do in today's day and age when you have this basically free agency every season, and then also you have schools like Texas Tech who are spending an enormous amount of money every year on their roster, and BYU is obviously spending a lot, and so I think it's going to be more difficult. Coaching stability helps Utah a lot of the time, so we'll see what Morgan Skelly does. I think when I was writing that story, it was just like Urban Meyer obviously built it over that 2-year stint, kind of laid the foundation, and then Kyle Whittingham really took it over and sustained that excellence. So it's going to be a lot of pressure on Morgan Skelly to try to do that. I'm interested to see how it goes his first year with the coaching staff and the quarterback situation and all that they have going on. I know there's a lot to replace on the offensive line, but I feel like the DNA of the program is still there. I'm kind of curious to see how Morgan Skelly approaches it. He's obviously somebody who was on that 04 Fiesta Bowl team, so he knows what it takes. I'm just curious to see how he executes.
Antonio Morales is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, national college football reporter over at The Athletic. Of course, the biggest story in college football this week has not been, hey, week 0 games are coming up. Thankfully, we will have those to talk about soon enough. But it's been these boomerang bounce-back players trying to get off of an NFL roster or out of an NFL mini camp or training camp and back onto a college football roster. What are your thoughts on this mess? And, the Big Ten and the SEC have already come down with their decisions. It's expected that we get similar announcements from the ACC and the Big 12 any minute now. But your thoughts on the latest drama in roster construction in college football?
I found the being on a preseason NFL roster and then being in the transfer portal at the same time, I just found it incredibly lame, and I wasn't a fan of it at all. I think I compared it to some Uncle Ricos trying to come in and play college football. So definitely not a fan of that. I just think once you leave college and declare for the NFL and you're on an NFL roster, your college playing days are done. And it's just funny that it's always Lane Kiffin. It seems like I think all the taboos that go along with college football. He's been involved. He's been involved in trying to reject them or expose them or exploit them. This offseason, you have a coach who left during a playoff run. The tampering stuff with Damon Williams at Washington, which everyone assumed LSU was pretty involved in. And then now you have NFL players coming back to play college football. So there's all these things where you're like, oh, there's no way that'll happen. They've all been pretty well connected to Lane Kiffin. And so he's managed a way to kind of try to find that gray area to do all this stuff. And this is another kind of eye roll example of it. And the SEC and Big Ten came out pretty hard with their rules against that stuff yesterday. So we'll see what the next step is of it. But it's obviously not a fun thing to have to focus on as games are approaching.
And obviously it becomes these super boring conversations about like injunctions and temporary restraining orders and district judges and all that kind of thing. And of course, the proposed solution to all of this has been federal legislation, has been a Protect College Sports Act or some equivalent thereof that now it seems like even the big boys and even the powers that be in college football are behind getting something done here. Do you think we ever do? Or because, you're dealing with really 4 major conferences, 2 that are more powerful than the others. Notre Dame has something to say there. And American politics are obviously a mess all the time. Do we ever get federal intervention on this, or are we going to keep having more of these stories to talk about?
I think for a couple of years we'll probably have a few more of these stories to talk about. I think the obvious endpoint is we'll see what happens when these TV deals expire. For these conferences around the early 2030s, and kind of see what happens there in terms of maybe a potential breakaway and these guys form their own leagues or anything. And I think that's obviously the next kind of realignment wave that we'll see, and maybe they'll just make their own rules and break away from the NCAA. It's a fascinating thing to watch unfold. All the legislation stuff kind of bores me. I don't want to read about it or hear about it until something's done. I'm not really into the minutia of but this is going to happen on Friday and this deadline, and then nothing comes of it. So I'm kind of waiting to see when something actually happens instead of all this talk and all this bluster about something potentially happening.
This is pulling an old headline out. It wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it was 2 years ago because of how fast the news cycles move these days. But what do you think happens with Brendan Sorsby's football career? Obviously, he couldn't play at Texas Tech this year. The NFL said no thank you on a supplemental draft. He's eligible to go into next year's draft. What do you think happens with Brendan Sorsby?
Obviously, next year's draft, he'll be a hot topic next year. But me and Sam Kahn, my colleague at The Athletic, we have this project every summer. This is the second year we've done it, where we have to rank all 138 FBS starting quarterbacks. And so there's a lot of film watching from May to July for me this year. And I remember watching Brendan Sorsby. I watched a few games of Brendan Sorsby this past year. One of them was Arizona. And I watched that game, and I thought Noah Fafita was the better quarterback when I watched the two play. Noah Fafita didn't get anywhere near the hype that Brendan Sorsby did. But you just hear about the traits and all this other stuff, and with Brendan Sorsby, it's like, okay, that's great, but you want to see that translate onto the football field. I think he's still a very raw player, and what I'm worried about now for him, aside from the off-the-field issues, what I'm worried about now for him as a football player is when you don't play for a year and you're really raw. It's like that's just basically a lost period, because he needs the reps and he needs that experience, and he's not going to get that this year. And he's probably not going to get it next year in the NFL draft. I don't know where he'd go. I don't see a team spending a first-round pick on him. And second-round picks aren't going to be for sure starters. So it's going to be a while before he gets the reps and the experience and the snaps that he needs. And I think that's going to be a detriment to him going forward.
Utah had a weird offseason right at the end of the season, obviously, with Kyle Whittingham making a retirement decision, deciding he didn't want to retire. The university effectively saying, we need you to retire. He ends up at Michigan, and he takes coaches and players with him, and it ended up being a pretty ugly divorce instead of a ride off into the sunset and you're our hero kind of an ending to Kyle Whittingham's tenure. And I'm still bummed about that. Now, a lot of my listeners get mad when I mention his name, but I'm a glutton for punishment. So I'm curious about what the Michigan product looks like with Kyle Whittingham. What do you think the Wolverines can achieve in his first year in Ann Arbor?
I think the floor is extremely high. Obviously, the Sharon Moore stuff was a mess last year at Michigan, right? He was doing whatever he was doing in DMs and talking to other females and stuff like that. That got him in trouble. And Michigan still won 9 games, and they were in the playoff mix until the final week of the regular season. So that was with a dysfunctional coaching staff or head coaching situation. I think obviously Kyle Whittingham will bring a baseline level of competence to that coaching situation, to that program. And I think the floor is really high for them, but obviously a lot's going to depend on what they get out of Bryce Underwood, who's their 5-star phenom quarterback who came in last year, but kind of underwhelmed and disappointed. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Jason Beck and what he can do with Underwood if he can unlock him. We saw what he did with Devin Dampier last year and Bert Ficklin. So I'm kind of curious to see what he does with Bryce Underwood and how he tries to unlock that 5-star potential, because it was kind of underwhelming last year and it was disappointing considering I think Bryce Underwood, I think the rumor was he was getting around $10 million over the course of his career for his time at Michigan, NIL/rev share wise. We didn't really see that 5-star potential. There was a little bit of flash, but it wasn't truly there. So I think that's the main thing that'll kind of determine the trajectory of Kyle Whittingham's first season in Michigan. But I think the floor should be really high. Obviously, he brought John Henry Daly and Smith Snowden to kind of bolster that roster and some of the defensive personnel that they've had. So I'm kind of curious to see kind of how it goes. And I think the coaching staff should be great. Jay Hill, at defensive coordinator. The schedule's hard. I believe they have Oregon and Ohio State this year and Penn State. So I think it'll be really interesting, really fascinating to see how that one goes.
Is the Big 12 a one-bid league in a 12-team college football playoff? Do we just have to get used to that?
Well, I think it depends. BYU has the big opportunity this year, right, to play Notre Dame and say they go 11-1 and they have a win against Notre Dame. I think that's a big feather in their cap in terms of non-conference win that they didn't necessarily have last year. So I think it really depends on how the schedule plays and who beats who and what happens in the other leagues. The SEC is in the nine-game conference schedule now. So if a team goes 9-3, will they be left out over, say, an 11-2 Big 12 team that maybe lost one of those 2 losses came in the Big 12 title game? Like I don't know if that'll happen. So I think it really depends on what plays out elsewhere across the country. A lot of these heavyweights in the Big Ten this year too are playing each other. I know Indiana plays Ohio State, and Oregon plays Ohio State as well. So you're going to see like a lot of crossover that we haven't seen the past couple of years. So I think we'll see more losses than usual from some of these juggernauts, and I think that could open the door for a second bid for the Big 12.
Last thing before I let you go, and maybe we'll have you on mid-season and your answer would be revised at that point, but just because we're about to start this whole thing off, who is going to win the national championship?
I think I'll go with Georgia right now. I know the SEC, it's been a while since they won a national title. I think they'll be due at some point, and I just trust Kirby Smart. I know they haven't had the best playoff luck, the best playoff fortune in the past few years. Their starting quarterback, Carson Beck, got hurt 2 years ago before the playoffs, and last year they ran into like a generational Trinidad Chambliss performance. But I think they'll have things break right this year, and they'll end the SEC's drought of national championships.
Antonio, appreciate you giving us some time today, sir. Keep up all the great work at The Athletic. We use your stuff for material on the show all the time, so thank you.
All right, thanks for having me.
Antonio Morales, go follow him on Twitter at Antonio C. Morales, National College Football Insider over at The Athletic. So I realize that summer is coming to a close, and I have not spent really any time boating, fishing, golfing with my old buddies, with the old crew. You know what I mean? Like the high school friends, the elementary school friends, the college buddies. I've done a terrible job of it this year. I have a solution, though, right? I'm not a great golfer. I'm actually a really terrible golfer, and it's hard to get people together. But if I send out an invitation and say that I want to golf, it's such a rare thing that I know my friends are going to show up. And that's how I'm going to fix this problem. I'm going to call them. I'm going to say, hey, I got us some tee times at Stansbury Park Golf Course. Let's go golf. And boom, problem solved. Because golfing with me, they all get a great laugh. If you're actually a good golfer, you're still going to enjoy the course. And the best thing about it is no crowds. Pace of play is perfect. You're not stuck behind two foursomes that are drinking too much and going too slow and talking too much crap. Great greens, great rates. They really have it all out there at Stansbury Park. And it's surprisingly quick to get to. Hop on the I-80, head out west to Tooele County, and play yourself around. During the weekdays, it's $45 for 18 holes. On the weekends, it's only $50 for 18 holes. StansburyPark.gov/golf course to book your tee time. That is StansburyPark.gov/golf course to book your tee time. Call the old high school buddies. Call your college roommates. You haven't seen them in a while. You don't know what happened with Joe's divorce. You don't know what happened with John's job. Get out there on the golf course, break some bread, have some fun, and hopefully your round will go better than mine because I'll be spraying balls all over the place. But that's because I'm a bad golfer. You're not. So go enjoy Stansbury Park Golf Course and explore Tooele County. Daily Dump coming up next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Look for the truck with the duck here on the Sean O'Connell Show. They can handle your plumbing needs, your drain cleaning needs, your vent cleaning needs, your air conditioner, your furnace, excavation in the yard. Really, most of what you need as a homeowner, the truck with the duck can handle it for you. Give them a phone call or go to valleyplumbinghvac.com and make an appointment right there on their online tool, the little portal on the web. You don't even have to pick up the phone. We talked about this at the beginning of the show. LSU continues to try to stockpile talent on these boomerang players, while also the school administration, the university president, voting in accord with his SEC compatriots and saying, yeah, we are going to disallow this. And they're just trolling everybody now. LSU basketball announced the signing of a 7'3" big man named Gilad Levi. He's been playing pro basketball in Israel and in Spain. And that's probably going to be a problem. But the explicit language in the SEC's ruling on bounce-back players is specific to the NBA, WNBA in basketball. So maybe, just maybe, this guy ends up playing in a way that Noam Yakov is not being allowed to play. But LSU continues to troll us all. And on one hand, you got to kind of respect it, that they're just leaning into being the bad guy there. On the other hand, I don't respect it at all. We've talked about the WNBA and the WNBA's kind of having their moment and some mismanagement of that moment and some leaning into the soap opera situation. I think maybe a little too much, at least on some fronts. But you have to give credit where it's due. The league is getting a lot of attention, and the Indiana Fever Chicago Sky game, which was a rematch where there was maybe some soap opera antics expected. Sophie Cunningham had run afoul of DeJounte Carrington and all these things. There had been some hard fouls between them. And the rematch, so to speak, obviously Caitlin Clark is involved here. The rematch is the highest rated game since the opening weekend of WNBA basketball. The average rating was 3.3 million viewers. That is a big number. That is a huge number. For a regular season basketball game, a regular season WNBA game, the only two games in the history of the league that were more watched than that was the first ever WNBA game and the third ever WNBA game on the same opening weekend. So for all of the criticism of leadership and the poo-pooing of the way that certain things are being handled, if people are watching your product is in a good place. I can tell you that this is a rating that, as part of a startup league myself, the PFL has been battling for 8 years now to try and get a number like this. Now, we're not on major network television. We are on regular cable, at least on ESPN most of the time. But 3.3 million viewers is massive. 3.3 million viewers is more than basically any combat sport is getting on the equivalent of a regular season game. It's better than baseball is doing in almost every case. This is a huge deal for the WNBA, and you got to give credit where it's due. Because you could easily just scroll on past a regular season game in any sports league. We do this with NBA games all the time. This was a premier matchup, premier players, and maybe some tomfoolery expected. Not delivered, by the way. Nothing happened. And viewers tuned in. So I guess good on you, WNBA. That's great news for a league that a lot of people are being critical of for the first time since 1997. It peaked at 3.82 million viewers. The New York Liberty versus the LA Sparks in the inaugural weekend So a New York versus LA matchup. I don't remember who was on that New York Liberty team, but that was like Lisa Leslie and company on those LA Sparks. That was a 5 million viewer type experience. And then the Charlotte Sting and Phoenix Mercury had 3.59 million views. Also, those were on NBC. This one was on NBC and Peacock. So the combined rating, I guess, was 3.3 million viewers. Caitlin Clark had 8 3-pointers and scored 37 points. The Fever won 113-90. Kelsey Mitchell had 30 points in that one. Pretty impressive stuff. No word from Enes Kanter on whether he's impressed with the rating or not. I'm sure we'll get something. From it.
I'm sure he has something to say about it, yeah.
We like to think that, the Utah fan base is as wild, crazy, raucous, loud as any in the world, right? Already, the Delta Center as an NHL barn is getting a reputation for being a raucous atmosphere, for being loud. When the Jazz are humming, remember what that's like? When the Jazz got good things going, obviously it's a really loud place. Rice-Eccles Stadium, raucous atmosphere. You go down to LaVell Edwards Stadium in a good situation, right? Good team, night game. That Notre Dame game is going to be loud and crazy. Still, sports fans in Utah can't hold a candle to this type of thing. There's a Dutch club that has banned its own fans from traveling to away games. They won't let their own fans come with them to away games because the fans are too rowdy and too insane. They almost set their own grandstand, their own stadium on fire because this is something that European sports definitely have over American sport. People bring like road flares and handheld fireworks into the games all the time, even indoor even like Serbian basketball games. There's smoke bombs and road flares indoors at these games all the time. And it creates this like really haunting, insane, apocalyptic type atmosphere when you've got flames and smoke hanging over this crowd of insane, loud, raucous fans. So, I mean, I understand why they want to do it. It looks really cool. It sounds really cool. But when you almost light your own stadium on fire, the team has to step in and say, all right, fans, no more of this. We've seen soccer hooliganism in Europe go absolutely insane. There's been some major violence. There's been like racial abuse and things like that at one point had, I think, but correct me if I'm wrong, it was in Italy. Fans were not allowed into the games for a portion of the season in Italy, in a couple of stadiums. That you just had to play in an empty stadium.
Yeah, I think that's right. We've had
it was only friends and family.
Had fans banned because of, like you said, the hooliganism, just people misbehaving. Too many people misbehaving at these soccer stadiums. I'm sure it's happened at the basketball arenas too. It's just not as big a deal globally, so we haven't heard about it as much. But the same kind of hooliganism with they bring the road flares and the fireworks to soccer stadiums in Europe too. They're bringing them inside.
They bring them inside. We did a fight in Lyon, France, and we went to a pro basketball game in Lyon, France, and it was, and there was like one person who had fireworks, which if it's everybody, it kind of makes sense. If it's just you, a little bit crazy.
Maybe you shouldn't have brought that.
Maybe then you're just the bad kid in school who can't sit still, and the teacher's like, you got to go to the principal's office.
That brings up a good question though. What's the fight atmospheres like? Is it anything similar in the fights?
I got to tell you this. It's really sad. It makes me really upset to have to admit this. So we've done fights in Spain. We've done fights in Germany, in Berlin. We've done many events now. I think 6 total events in France, a couple in Paris, and a couple in Lyon, one in Nantes. which is a city no one's ever heard of in France. We've done a couple in Belgium, in Brussels, Belgium. And the European sports fans are lunatics. They're so passionate. They're so loud. They're so crazy. It's just an atmosphere that the American audience for our fights don't even come close to matching it. The Europeans over there, and you want to say, oh man, well, that's just because it's fights and they don't get as many fights, right? I went to a Rugby World Cup game. I've told this story before. It was Uruguay versus Namibia. They were the two worst teams in the tournament, okay? There were probably only 10,000 fans total from those two nations that had actually made the travel and owned the jerseys and stuff and showed up. 10,000 is probably too many. It was probably 5,000. The stadium was still full, and it was still loud, and people were still going crazy just for the sport itself, not even for their favorite team. They were just being loud. I think there's something weird about European culture where it's the only time they ever get loud and express themselves that way.
That might be true.
It's kind of like here in Utah, right?
It might be true.
There's maybe a repressed sort of thing because of the formality of European culture that they just go bananas when it comes to sports. Like we do, nobody here ever says a loud word or a bad word or a harsh word until you're in a Utah Jazz jersey sitting in the 8th row at the Delta Center, and then you're cursing up a storm, right?
Fake swear words or otherwise, absolutely.
And your neighbor's looking at you just being like, where did you learn that language? I don't know, man. So
you might be right about that. Maybe it is something to do with the way things are every day in contrast with, okay, I can let loose at the stadium, people.
It's the only explanation I can come up with.
Because it's so true, having mentioned before, having lived in Europe, it's a lot more refined, I might say, in everyday life. Of course, didn't get a chance to go to any sports events in Hungary, but I would imagine it's not that different from any other European place.
You never cheated and went to a water polo game
or
something?
No, and unlike the missionary state side, that you have the Mormon nights in most of the states at the major league games, baseball or otherwise. They didn't have Mormon night in Hungary, unfortunately. So
too bad.
Couldn't make it out there.
Speaking of missionaries, did you see? So do you know who the streamer I Show Speed is? You know who that guy is? He's a very famous streaming star. Yeah. He's started to do some crossover stuff in sports. It's the only reason I know who he is.
Yeah, sure.
But he
you're a closet streaming fan.
Thank goodness that has not been a curse of my life yet. On his feed this week, and I think he just streams his whole life, which is crazy, but he was doing a giveaway where if you could pick up this cube of metal, you had to just use one hand and pick it up. I don't know how much it weighs. It's slick on the sides. It's like this challenge that nobody can do.
The sword in the stone challenge.
It's like one of these things. If you could pick it up with one hand, you win $10,000. He's just giving away $10,000. And 100 people tried it and failed. And then some random missionary. They're at a gas station.
Let's go.
And some random Australian missionary came over and just picked it up. He's like, is it like that?
He's like, good day.
He's like, how about that, mate?
How much Vegemite can I buy with this?
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
I don't know what the rules are when you're on your mission of getting a Venmo from a streamer for 10 grand is
getting paid. I don't know. Unfortunately, I never had that challenge on my mission. That's amazing though. Speaking of Australia, that craziness with you talking about how crazy European sports fans are. You ever see those videos of darts in Australia?
Dude.
And that's for darts.
Okay. I was in Newcastle, England for fights. Our fights were on a Saturday night. I'm sitting in kind of the hotel courtyard on a Friday night, and suddenly hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people come walking past from the train station, walking through the hotel just because of the position it was, walking through this courtyard. and they're dressed in like Halloween costumes. It was not Halloween. It was late November or something. And I was like, what's going on here? And they're all, half of them are already a little bit loose.
Yeah.
Having enjoyed some time at the pub previous. They're wearing like full-on Big Bird costumes. They're wearing chicken suits. I'm like, where are all these people going?
So did you follow them?
And the hotel guy's like, I don't know. Finally, there was a group of lads, right? Probably like college age. I'm like, hey, what is this? Where are you guys going? It's the darts, mate. We're going to the darts. I was like, there's darts tonight? Like, yeah, just over there, yonder. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go buy a ticket and I'm gonna watch these darts because it was gonna be crazy. I mean, there were thousands of people at the end of the day.
It was like Comic-Con Fan X cosplay.
Yes, but for darts. I'm like, okay, so I walked up to the venue window, and it's probably like the equivalent of like the Maverick Center or whatever,
Okay.
It's pretty big, but it's not gigantic.
Come on over to the Maverick Center, mate.
And I was like, hey, I'd like a ticket. And they laughed. They're like, been sold out forever, mate. I'm like, well, why is there even a ticket window open? A will call. I was like, oh, all right.
Well, mine's under this name.
So I
try that.
I tried because, like, the people we work with over there, they manage events and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, okay.
Try to name drop.
So I called one guy who's connected, right? I called him. I'm just like, hey, can you get me into the darts? And he's like, I got you. Hang on. Just stay where you are. And in 15 minutes, I'll have you a ticket. I was like, okay. So I hang out. I'm talking to people. Like, oh, are you coming in? I'm just like, I don't have a ticket yet. They're trying to get me a ticket. Every single person that had their tickets were just like, oh, we wish we had an extra one for you. There's nothing better. Guy calls me back and is just like, I tried.
Oh, my gosh.
I could not get you a ticket. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I called the network, like the head of the network who's televising these things, whatever it was, like BT Sport or whatever. He's like, I called that guy. I used to work with him. He doesn't have a ticket. He can't get you an extra ticket. I'm like, what the bleep?
And it's for darts.
It was for darts.
And some of those videos, the ones I've seen were like an Australian dart league. The color announcer, or the color analyst, if you will, and the play-by-play guys are like, it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Okay.
Yeah, they really play it up.
Yeah. And that just, to your point, we don't have anything close to that for even for NFL games, for college football games.
So
as far as atmosphere,
I guess that's a long way of saying, guys, we gotta step it up as sports fans. We're not burning down our own stadiums and being banned from away games.
We're not making it impossible for people to go watch checkers. Like, come on,
we're not borderline criminals every time that we're cheering for sports. Come on, guys. All right, Daily Dump brought to you by Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Look for the truck with the duck and tell them OC sent you. ESPN has put out a list of their top 100 players in college football. How many Utes made the list? I'll tell you next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Top 100 players of ESPN put out. College football players, I should say. How many Utes made the list, James?
Top 100.
In all of college
Two?
football. Zero. Dang it. How many non-Power 4 players do you think made the list?
Is it also 0?
It's 1.
1.
And he's listed as number 100. New Mexico linebacker Jackson Eck is the number 100 player on ESPN's list. All right, I'm going to give you another crack at guessing in a completely unfair context. How many Big 12 players made the ESPN Top 100 list?
Big 12 players. 3.
More.
10.
More.
25.
No.
13.
It's 12.
12. I mean, that's basically Baker's dozen. There you go. I nailed it.
How many of those 12 players do you think come from Texas Tech University?
7.
6.
6. Okay. They're not the entire Big 12, all right?
So number 98, Adam Trick, transferred into Texas Tech. He is number 98 on the list. Ben Roberts, who was the defensive player of the game in the Big 12 championship last year.
That's right.
He is number 94 on the list. Trey White, another incoming transfer from San Diego State. He is number 83 on the list.
Okay.
Terrence Carter Jr. He is number 66 on the list. Bryce Pollock is number 27 on the list. A.J. Holmes Jr. is number 25 on the list, defensive tackle for Texas Tech. He is the highest ranked Big 12 player on the list.
Anybody from BYU? No, any Bear Bachmeier? Any
L.J. Martin came in at number 58.
Okay. Just him, though.
Yes, no Bear Bachmeier.
Interesting.
No Cade Uluwave. No Legend Glasker. No Isaiah Glasker.
It feels like they're sleeping on the Big 12. And I'm glad L.J. Martin made it. That would seem like a giant omission for him not to be a top 100 player. But I said 2. I guess 2 for Utah football players because I thought Devin Dampier and Wayshawn Parker would be on the list. That surprises me that not one of those 2 are on there.
Not mentioned. Here's the L.J. Martin blurb. Notable stats: 236 carries, 1,305 yards, 12 touchdowns. His postseason ranking after 2025, they do a preseason top 100 list, a postseason top 100 list. He was ranked number 69 last year, so this is 11 spots higher. Martin could have tested his luck in the NFL draft after being named Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year in 2025, but opted to return for a final season in Provo. He rushed for 1,305 with 12 touchdowns and averaged 5.5 yards per carry a year ago. 2,541 career rushing yards. He could make a run at 4,000-yard mark by the end of the season. Josh Hoover, former Big 12 player, now at Indiana. He came in at number 55. And this one is going to sting. I'm going to mention it. Utah fans, prepare yourself. There is a former Ute on the list, on the top 100 list. Do you want to take a crack at who that is?
John Henry Daly.
Number 20 on this list. The 20th best player in the country.
How good is he with the torn Achilles, though? Is he still top 20?
Well, apparently he's ready to go.
I guess he's healed. But I'll believe that when I see it, OC.
Look, it's not outside the realm of possibility if it was a straightforward tear in the Achilles. We have seen guys, most notably Terrell Suggs, come back from this very, very quickly. And obviously, big body guy, plays the same position. I think probably plays the same position with a little bit more torque even on the lower body than John Henry Daly. And he was good even after. So there's a possibility that John Henry Daly does not skip a beat here. The blurb on him He emerged as one of the top pass rushers at Utah, followed Coach Kyle Whittingham and others to Ann Arbor. 11.5 sacks, 17.5 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles in 11 games before suffering a ruptured Achilles tendon. Still finished second nationally in sacks per game and third in tackles per loss per game. That's the blurb. That's our guy, Adam Rittenberg, who wrote the blurb. 24 solo tackles, 11.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 17.5 tackles for loss for John Henry Daly. They've got him ranked number 20 nationally among all players on the list. The total list of Big 12 talents is Adam Trick from Texas Tech, Caleb Hawkins, running back from Oklahoma State, Ben Roberts from Texas Tech, number 84, Cam Cook from West Virginia, number 83, Trey White from Texas Tech. Noah Fafita came in at number 81, the Arizona quarterback. Shadre Hurst from Houston at number 69. He's an offensive lineman, a transfer from Tulane. He is an NFL player. He's going to be really, really good for Houston. Terrence Carter Jr. from Texas Tech, I already mentioned, at 66. L.J. Martin at 58. Drew Mestemaker, the incoming Oklahoma State quarterback, is number 32. So Oklahoma State has 2 players, but Utah's got 0. And BYU's got 1.
Haven't you heard, OC? Oklahoma State's the new Indiana. That's another thing. Like, can we not just anoint teams that this is like the outlier of all outliers, what Kurt Cignetti and Indiana have been able to do the last 2 years, especially last year winning the national championship? Okay, the next time a top group of 6 head coach goes to a lowly Power 4 program, oh, wow, they're going to be Indiana. Like, come on. We have to wait and see before they do it. And Mestemaker, great talent. His coach did a great job at North Texas with him. But that doesn't mean they're going to be a good team in the Big 12 yet. Come on.
Bryce Pollock from Texas Tech, A.J. Holmes Jr. from Texas Tech. And this is bothering me, so 877-353-0700. If he's A.J. Holmes, is he also A.J. Holmes Jr.? Because A.J. usually means whatever, Anthony Jr., right? Aaron Jr., Arthur Jr. So is that redundant to be an A.J. and then a junior?
Unless the J is for, like, James or Jeffrey or something. But you're right. When you're a junior and you go by A.J. or DJ or something, the J is typically junior.
That's junior.
Yeah.
Right?
So is he AJ? Is that what he's listed as? A.J. Holmes Jr.?
A.J. Holmes Jr. So is he Anthony Jones Holmes Jr. Jr.? A.J. Jr.? Or is he Anthony?
Yeah,
is the A.J. Is it really an A.J.? I guess is the question. Is his dad also A.J. is the better question.
Well, and if
dad is also A.J., then you can be A.J. as well.
If that is that all it is? Is your name just 2 letters, or is it initials?
It's like the Homer J. Simpson thing.
Yeah.
You ever saw that episode?
Yeah. Well, there's lots of people. My grandpa, his middle name was just a letter. It was just K. So there's.
Wait, what? Really?
Yeah.
Just a letter?
It was just Ellis K. Cheney. Shout out.
Not K-A-Y.
Not K-A-Y, just K.
Can you James, get to the bottom of this. What was the K for? Did the K signify anything?
I'm going to have to do some investigative reporting.
Was he a big baseball fan and he wanted it to be a strikeout K?
Maybe I'll call Pablo Torre. Help me investigate
Forward
this.
or backward K?
It was regular K.
Okay, regular K. So it's
he
not
wasn't a baseball player.
Not a strikeout looking kind of a K.
That would be pretty
That'd
sweet.
Be pretty
though.
sick. I know a family. Their youngest, well, I think he's their youngest. They gave their son the middle name The. So shout out to the Kents, now living in Oregon, former cop, former fighter here in Utah. Their youngest boy, Finnegan the Kent, because they wanted it to sound like Robert the Bruce. They wanted it to sound like, a royal title.
It's like Amon-Ra St. Brown. His dad put the Saint in their last name.
His dad's name is John Brown. The kids, he was just like, they're St. Browns. His name is John Brown.
Yeah,
and he
didn't
named
change his own name to St. Brown.
he named
Brown.
his children Equanimous, Amun Ra, and Osiris St. Brown. I think he didn't like growing up with a common name.
I think that must have been what it was. And if you watched the Receiver show on Netflix that Amun Ra was featured in, he talked about how names signified power and importance to his dad, and probably what's behind that is like, I just hated being John Brown.
Probably.
That's probably what's behind all
He's
that.
a bodybuilder.
But he was like, names are important. You got a powerful name, you're going to be a powerful person. That was his belief. And look, I mean, is Osiris in the NFL?
I think he's the only one who's not.
Okay, so 2 of his 3 kids NFL players.
And they all played.
I think it worked out.
They all played high Division I football.
Yeah.
Like major Division I football.
I feel
St.
like
Browns.
I feel like Amun Ra is the best one. Like, what's your name? Amun Ra.
So, if you're Osiris, aren't you mad because isn't Amun Ra higher on the Egyptian god scale than Osiris?
I have to look it up. I think you're right, though.
I think Amun Ra
He's
is
the
like
sun god, right?
He's like the Egyptian Zeus, if I'm not mistaken.
Osiris is one of the more important ones too, but I think you might be.
We're gonna have to look this up, and we're gonna have to get John Brown on and be like, "Hey, did you not like one of these?" Because Osiris is older, if I'm not mistaken. Like, you thought the younger kid needed the even more powerful name? We'll get to the bottom of this. Anyway, that's the top 100 list. 0 Utes on the ESPN top 100 players list. 1 former Ute in John Henry Daly, and 6 Texas Tech Red Raiders of the 12 total Big 12 players on the top 100. 6 of them from Texas Tech. L.J. Martin from BYU, the in-state player on there. We'll start hour number 3 next. I want to reiterate a question and add a couple of wrinkles to it. We're projecting out stats for the Utah football team this season. Sacks, leading sack leader, and individual sack stats. Get your texting fingers ready. I want to hear from you. 877-353-0700 on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, we have some Utah practice sound. James went up to post-practice availability, gathered some sound for us. We're going to play that for you here in about 15 minutes. We'll start with Morgan Scalley. If there's time, we'll get to some of the players as well. You can find all the gathered sound at ESPN700sports.com and on the ESPN 700 app in the on-demand section. My over-under questions for today are about one of the sexier stats in all of college football. We're, of course, talking about sacks on the defense. Massively disruptive, drive killers for an opposing offense, and sort of a health indicator for Utah's defense. The really, really good years of Utah defense, with rare exception, you've had a premium pass rush. And in a lot of cases, you've had a premium pass rusher. I'm asking you, will Utah have a pass rushing leader over or under 7.5 sacks on the season? I wanted to put it at 9.5, but double-digit sacks, there were 4 guys in the Big 12 Conference last year that achieved double-digit sacks. 4. Utah had one of them in John Henry Daly. He had 11.5. You go back to 2 years ago, Van Fillinger led the Utah defense with 6. By the way, shout out to Van Fillinger. I don't know if anyone saw this. I don't know if he already took part in or he is taking part in some weird bull riding challenge. Did you see this, James?
I did not, but shout out, yeah.
There's like this, it's like a social media thing where they're letting guys, like these big burly dudes. I know like Van was doing it, and a guy who trains at my gym, young kid, former Utah football walk-on, just a tank of a young man. He's like 6'3", 250 of muscle, and he was going to do it too. I don't know anything about the company, but I saw a little interview when I was doom scrolling one day.
We got to check with Porter Larson if he's giving any like coaching here, because he's a guy who's actually done some of that stuff,
which is the coolest thing ever. But back to the topic at hand, I have a poll question up right now. Who will be Utah's sack leader this coming season? And because you could put 4 options on there, the 4 that I chose were Lance Holtzclaw, Cash Dillon, Paul Fitzgerald, Ethan Day. You can also throw the other at me. Right now, Holtzclaw has 56% of the votes. Cash Dillon is in second with 25. Paul Fitzgerald not getting any love. He's at 5%. Ethan Day is at roughly 13%. Paul Fitzgerald has the most productive single season of all those guys. When he was at Utah State, he had an 8-sack season. It was pretty darn good. Holtzclaw started to really break out later at the end of last year. Cash Dillon, obviously a really high-quality player. Both of those guys obviously playing behind or in rotation with one of the best sackmen in the country. So, I mean, there's a lot of wrinkles to this. As a team, how many sacks will Utah football have this season? I'm setting the over-under at 28.5. Right now, 72% of people think that 7.5 sacks for the individual sack leader is a no-brainer, and I'm an idiot, so I didn't put the poll option up on the team sacks, and I have to reconstruct the tweet here. But the question still stands, 877-353-0700. How many sacks will Utah football have as a team this year? Over, under 28.5. James Peterson, what say you?
Man, it feels like a no-brainer to say the over, but they lost so much out of their sack production by losing one guy, really, in John Henry Daly, so I can see why it's viable to put it at under 30 sacks, but it feels like Utah, don't they always get over 30 sacks, with the exception of a few years, I guess? I'm going to say over because it feels very attainable, even though they don't have a lot of returning sack production.
Last year, they had 34 sacks.
I bet 2024 might have been a year they were under 30.
They had 24 the year in 2024. 24 sacks below the standard for Utah football.
Absolutely.
In 2023, they had 36 sacks.
Yeah. See, like they just
In 2022, they had 41 sacks. In 2021, they had 42 sacks. The 2020 season doesn't count, but
yeah, they only played 5 games. It's going to be low.
they had 10 in 5 games.
All right, 2 per game. What's that? So 42 in 2021. They played 13 games. That's
So the over-under here,
about 3 per game.
the over-under here I set deliberately pretty far below the Utah standard, but think of all of the change, okay? New coach in OK Brechterfield, new players effectively. You've got guys that, like Lance Holtzclaw. We all love Lance Holtzclaw. Lance Holtzclaw has 1.5 sacks.
Yeah, he has no proven production. He's been a great personality, obviously very well spoken, and that has endeared him to us. And he came from a Power 4 school to Utah. He had that talent coming out of high school. We need to see him put it together, and this year might be the year.
If you hit the over on 28.5, so you've got 29 or more sacks, you're right in the middle of the pack nationally. Okay? You are a top 50 team nationally. Like BYU last year had 30 sacks. They were one of the best defenses in the Big 12. They were one of the better defenses, total defenses in the country. It wasn't necessarily because of their team sack ability, their team pass rush. Jack Kelly had 10 sacks himself, but they didn't really fill in the blanks around him necessarily from a pass rush perspective. It feels on some level like, yeah, of course you're going to get better than that. But are you? Because a big part of what drove the total up over 30 last year was one guy having 11.5.
He had almost a third of the team's sacks.
And if you have a standout pass rusher, you can probably bank on this. So there's a lot of ways to look at this question. Do I believe Ethan Day is going to be double-digit sack man? Do I believe Lance Holtzclaw is a double-digit sack man? If the answer to either of those is yes, you got a good chance of going over 30. If you think both of those guys or 2 of any, then you're going to probably have 40 sacks. The leading team in the country, the leading pass rush in the country last year was Miami, who had 50 sacks. Indiana had 46. Oklahoma had 45. A&M, Western Michigan, both had 43. Texas Tech was the top in the Big 12 last year. They had 41 sacks on the year.
That's not surprising at all. That defensive line was scary.
And Utah was number 2 in the conference last year. So Arizona State tied with Utah. They were 34. So you look at 2025 and you say, all right, this year should be what last year was. Or you look at 2024 and say, we're probably closer to that. In that case, you would be taking the under here. And your answer on the individual sack total for the leading sack man is probably going to influence how you answer the team sacks question. Because if you believe there's an individual pass rusher who's 7.5 or higher, who's 8 sacks or better, then you're probably more confident that this team will generate enough pass rush to get up over 30, to get up over 29, whatever. This is kind of like the passing yards numbers I was putting out there, because if you hit the over on some of these totals, I think you have a really healthy season. If you're flirting with the under on things like yards per catch, touchdown passes, total passing yardage, now we're talking about a couple of games where you obviously underperformed, where things maybe got a little bit more difficult. And sacks is one where you need production, but you also need production at the right times. If you have 6 sacks in the game against Idaho and you have no sacks in the game against BYU, that's a problem for your season.
I mean, we saw this in 2024, bringing up 2024. Van Fillinger was the team's leading sack leader. He was the nation's leading sack leader through 4 games.
And then it stopped. I think he had 1 for the rest of the year.
And then he couldn't keep up the pace for various reasons. I think playing hurt was one of them. So absolutely timing matters. It doesn't matter if you're near the top in your conference as a team or as a player, or in near the top of the nation in those categories in sacks through 3 games. Like, where are you? Where are you in the middle of conference season? Where are you against BYU, like you say?
According to the internet, the record for sacks in a single season for the University of Utah was 55, where they led nationally, and that's when Nate Orchard had 18 and a half sacks.
Oh my gosh, and
Hunter Dimmick opposite him
he had 10, right?
Had double-digit sacks also.
Yeah, you had 2 double-digit sack guys, and one of them darn near got 20 sacks. And yeah, I remember you saying this now a couple years ago, OC, when at the start of the show. Didn't you say that 40 is around the number that Utah has gotten in their best seasons ever in the Kyle Whittingham era anyway, and Urban Meyer in 04 too? 40 is kind of the number that you say, okay, this defense is a championship defense.
I think that's where you average out this is the kind of team that they need to be. This is the kind of defensive pass rush that they need to be. Less than that. And by the way, it doesn't have to come from your defensive ends. Like, I put defensive ends on there as your leading individual because that's the nature of the position.
I mean, that's who you expect. That's basically the job of the D end, is to pressure the quarterback and get sacks.
If you can generate team sacks by having, like 3 of your defensive ends in that rotation, around 6, 7. See what I did?
Yeah.
And then, you got...
Well done by you.
You got like a Trey Reynolds who adds 5. You have a corner who adds 2 or 3 more. Maybe you find, Christian Ellis, if it's in the blood, okay?
Yeah.
So if he has the blitzing acumen or even the stand-up pass rushing acumen of his brothers, then you can probably flirt with that and do some of that from a scheme standpoint where you're just like, all right, I mean, technically on this down, you're the Sam backer, and the quarterback doesn't know if you're going to drop back into coverage or if you're going to rush off the end, but we know you're good at this, so go throw a spin move and get a sack. If you can manufacture these things with simulated pressures and scheme pressures and stunts and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter if you have a Nate Orchard or a Hunter Dimmick or a Jonah Ellis or a Kylie Fitz or any of these guys who've done a really, really good job of rushing the passer in recent years for the University of Utah football team. But it goes a long way if you have one guy who takes double-digit sacks and makes them part of his contribution to the team.
I feel like 2021 might be one of those years that you're talking about where I think Mika Tafua was the leading defensive end, if I'm not mistaken, as far as a sack leader from that position. But they got to 40-plus sacks that year also not because they had an incredible, as good as Tafua was, he wasn't necessarily incredible individually that year for them, but you had guys like Devin Lloyd who, doing everything else that he did, being the game wrecker he was, also almost got 10 sacks by himself. So the sacking quarterback by committee, if you will, from the linebacker spot and getting good production, if not great production, from your rotation of defensive ends, that's also a proven good formula for you for Utah football.
Derek says, honestly, I think we break 30 and Holtzclaw and Day will both have double-digit sacks.
That'd be incredible.
If you have 2 double-digit sack men, you're getting more than 30. You're probably pushing 40.
To have, yeah, I mean, that's probably disappointing if you only get 30 as a team if you have 2 double-digit sack men, but it'd be awesome if Utah was able to get 2 guys in double digits for sure.
The other thing that is worth noting, you have to talk about here, right, is this is what defensive coaches and this is what defensive-minded coaches and the GMs that they're working for or that work for them, when you go into a season and you don't have returning sack production, you go into an offseason and it's like John Henry Daly left. And you would have been exploring this because of his injury anyway. You're going, who are we going to bring in? Who are we going to add that has pass rushing production? 2 years ago, you brought in Paul Fitzgerald. because he had 8 sacks at Utah State, and you're just like, okay, we can get this guy in our weight room, we can get this guy with our coaches, and we can make him even better than that, and maybe he could be a 10-sack guy, or at least he'll bring that production straight across. Unfortunately, injury has prevented him from doing that in a Utah football uniform. Cash Dillon is – I'm actually surprised at how many people are just kind of like sleeping on Cash Dillon. I get it. Ethan Day, he's an exciting player. He's really disruptive. He's going to create a bunch of havoc plays, and it doesn't have to be sacks. He's like – I could see him being in that 7-sack range, but also with 4 forced fumbles and an interception and things like that. I think his versatility is going to be a big thing for the University of Utah. But this is what keeps you up at night if you're Colton Swan, because your defensive backs, I think, are more than good enough this year if you have a pass rush. There is not a group of defensive backs in the country that can cover consistently for 4.5 or 5 seconds. Those people don't exist. And if they do exist, they're at LSU. They're at Notre Dame this year. Texas Tech has a bunch of guys they brought in and paid a bunch of money to. If they don't have a pass rush, it's not possible. Wide receivers win that battle because they know where they're going. The only thing that equalizes is pass rush. Every quarterback in college football, if you give him 5 seconds, is going to find somebody open because receivers are good enough to get open. Pass rush is one of the most important things for Utah to establish, and you can't wait until week 6. It has to happen. I want, however many sacks you have against Idaho, I want you to have that same number against Arkansas and against Utah State. More against Utah State. They give up a lot of sacks.
Let me ask you this, OC, as someone who's been through fall camp before as a player, a couple different places. Because you're not tackling as much, particularly the pass rush is not there. When they get home, they're not taking down the quarterback. How much can you really know in practice before the games have started how good your pass rush is going to be? Is it possible, or is it really like, let's see what happens when the game starts? We have these indicate they're beating their individual assignment on offensive line, but we'll see if they can take guys down once the lights are on. It's
a great question, and it's honestly, I think that is more quarterback dependent than it is anything else, because in an ideal scenario, in a more common or typical scenario, right, if you win your battle in the rush, you should get the quarterback down. Like Bear Bachmeier is really hard to bring down. Caleb Williams used to be very hard to bring down. Sam Darnold, actually, when you played against Sam Darnold, like, he was so hard to bring down. There are guys that are much better at staying upright. Devin Dampier, there's going to be guys that Utah plays this year that defensive end or that blitzing backer, they win their individual battle. They get around their block, and they're still not going to get the sack because of who the quarterback is. So it's one of those things that even though you don't get to practice taking the quarterback down during camp, you do get to practice that during the week of game prep. Sorry, scout team quarterbacks, you're not protected.
No red jersey for you.
You at least get to wrap that guy up. You at least get to thud on that guy. So it's a good question. I think the answer to the question is heavily dependent on the quarterback you're rushing against, because some of those guys, like, some of them are like a Donovan McNabb or a Ben Roethlisberger, where they're just so damn big it's hard to bring them down.
Man, it felt like Roethlisberger never got sacked.
And some of them, it's because, well, there's probably 3 versions of this. There's the quarterback who gets the ball out of his hand fast enough that you don't get the sack because of that. There are quarterbacks like Ben Roethlisberger who are just bigger than you and can shrug off because you're coming off balance a little bit, right? You're around the edge, you're bending, and you're getting a hand on them and trying to, like, use one grip to pull them all the way down. Doesn't work all the time because some of them are too strong. And then there's guys like Devin, like Pat Mahomes, like Lamar Jackson, where they have that spidey sense, and you win your matchup, and you go to gather to make the tackle, but they're gone.
Yeah, they're just elusive.
You can't touch them. So that's another thing. Your finish, like winning a pass rush is a pressure, not a sack. It's a nice little stat.
Which pressures matter too. Like those are disruptive too if you do it right. But
Winning your rep against the offensive lineman, that's a pressure. Finishing that rep, that's a sack. And oftentimes that's a fumble.
Yeah.
And that is the most disruptive. A strip sack fumble is the most disruptive play a defense can make.
Shout out to Jack Sawyer. Strip sack fumble touchdown. Let's go.
You find a way to bring it back to Ohio State every time.
I think of that every time I think of strip sack now because
Honestly,
it was such an incredible play.
That was one of the best plays an individual can make in college football.
At those high stakes, too, college football playoff semifinal, let's go.
All right, we're going to give you Morgan Scally sound from practice yesterday. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, if you're in the Saratoga Springs area this evening, you'll find me at Southern Steer. I got to head down there. I got to grab myself some meats, doing a little weekend barbecue with some friends, and I'm going to go get some ethically sourced, clean meats to feed not only my family, but the families of those people close to me. 1705 North Redwood Road in Saratoga Springs. Dan and Aubrey Gunther have set up an old neighborhood butcher shop with a modern twist. All the great technology of the modern day with the atmosphere, the friendliness, the recommendations, and the better product, the clean, healthy meat of your grandparents' era. All natural chicken, boneless pork chops, black Angus ground beef, thick steaks. If you want them cut thin, fine. You like your skirt steaks, you want something for some carne asada, maybe a little tri-tip. Southern Steer can handle all of it for you. If you're looking for exotic meats, you want some ostrich, you want a little bit of elk, maybe there's some exotic goat out there that you've been dying to try. Tell them that's what you want. They will find it for you. Join the Southern Steer Rewards Club. They've got daily savings on different items. They've got weekly savings on different items. And they've got the full meal combos if you don't want to go through the whole rigmarole of what am I going to cook tonight? What am I going to do for the sides? I need to give the kids some veggies. They don't like to eat veggies. I don't know how to cook veggies. I don't know how to season the veggies so they taste good. Just let Southern Steer handle it. Right now, 3 full meal combos. They call it the Mealtime Combo. $59 for everything you need for 3 complete meals. So for $20 a meal, you're feeding the entire family clean, healthy food. That is meat, that is sides, that is everything. You just have to throw it in the oven or throw it in the air fryer or throw it in the microwave if that's how you want to do it. If you're doing a barbecue and you need an appetizer tray, you need a sampler. Maybe you just need to stop by and see what the selection looks like, grab some barbecue sauce, a marinade, a rub. Southern Steer really does have it all. Get there this weekend. I'm going to be there tonight, 1705 North Redwood Road in Saratoga Springs. Southern Steer Butcher for the best beef, chicken, pork, and much more. All right. Post-practice media availability. Morgan Scally spoke with the gathered folks. James Peterson caught the sound for us.
Morgan, what are your biggest takeaways now that fall camp is wrapped up?
Injury-free for the most part. We got some bumps and bruises, guys that still need to get some rehab in, but we'll be ready to go for game 1 and feel very good about where we're at in terms of depth chart and stuff like that. Stuff I won't talk to you guys.
You guys are about 1 week out from the start of the season. Just what is the biggest thing left to do on the checklist?
Odds and ends with some situational stuff. And, you know, obviously now it turns from our behavior, our culture now to studying opponent film. And so, you know, with Idaho, you're looking at Iowa State on the defensive side of the ball. You're looking at Grand Valley on the offensive side of the ball. You're trying to get any sort of information you can get from where these coaches are coming from. The good news is they'll be playing on Friday. So we'll get a really good peek at that, but just making sure you guys understand how to study film the right way. There is a process to going about it, and you really have to teach them, okay, so on a control down, first and second down, this is what you're looking at. These are the cutouts that you need to look at, and just scoring them up on that. So much more opponent work right now.
Looking back at fall camp, did you, we're ending it, did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish in fall camp?
Yes, 100%. We got depth figured out. We stayed for the most part injury-free, and we established our leadership. So that'll be, if I don't know, has it been announced?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, take
you
us
can see
through
it's a big one, right? You got a big leadership council, and that's, I think, just you got a lot of guys getting a lot of votes. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. There's not one guy in that group, whether it be from the captain group or the leadership council group, that I'm sitting there going like, I don't know. Those guys are compelling. They're bringing others with them. It's a really solid group.
How do you feel about the deep defensive line depth?
Really good. Really good. And you may not know why. But, you know, good to have Carson back the past couple days, and you've had a couple guys that were dinged up, and we've had to rotate and do some stuff. But really like the progress of those guys, and there may be a couple others that show up.
You talked about wanting to improve red zone efficiency during camp at one point. How has that been now that camp's over?
I'm glad I said that because maybe they got butt hurt or something, because it's been fantastic since then. So maybe they thought I was calling them out. Man, really good the next couple days. That was fantastic. So McGibbon is a competitor, man. Maybe he heard that and was like, okay. No, that was good. It was, we cleaned some stuff up for sure.
Have you noticed a different energy yesterday and today, now that it's not fall camp and it's more into that game mindset?
Yeah, well, and school starts. So you get school starting and you got an academic schedule and guys are going to school. We were practicing more in the morning during fall camp, and then you're practicing in the afternoon. So it's just making sure those guys bring the same energy regardless of what time of day you're practicing. I thought for the most part we got what it wasn't a real. Today was our more physical practice. Kind of planned for the first day of school being something that you gotta, okay, let's get started with some opponent work, nothing too taxing. But today was a grinder for him. It was really good.
Morgan, you guys have one of the more unique players in college football in Semi. I guess what can he bring to this team?
Oh man. Yeah, well, you talk about the safeties being versatile. This is a guy that can play smash mouth football. He can block on the edge. He can run routes. He can catch the ball. Obviously, in high school, he was a defensive tackle. So there's a lot that this guy can do. Sione, the guy I don't want everyone to sleep on is Sione Motuapuapu. That guy is, just as valuable as Semi is. And for the exact same reasons, just the versatility of what we're able to do with him. And so can't say enough about those guys, plus the fact that they're team guys. They're guys that were recruited at one position, asked now to play a different position, and didn't bat an eye doing it. I love those guys. Love it. Because I didn't do that. I was asked to move to safety, and I was like, what? No. Wish I had thought about that sooner.
With tackling, that's been like a reoccurring topic going back to spring. Just how have you assessed the team in that area as you guys inch closer to the season?
Spring ball was one that we got more tackling in the spring ball than we ever have. Fall camp was tackling early on, but you're trying to mix it in and trying to get to the party healthy. There's some guys that we certainly trust, and then other guys that if we feel like they need continued tackling work, that's going to be more in a controlled setting with scout team players, but you got to do it. You got to do it. This is, we don't go out there on Saturdays and play tag.
Great stuff from the gathered media, including James and, of course, Morgan Scally. Camp Scally, even if it's not technically camp, this is a game prep practice, but still, coverage is brought to you by CenXL JBR, Beer Bar, Citron Cooperman, Big O Tires, Sound Warehouse, your Utah Toyota dealers, right here on your home of the Utes on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
Yeah, camp's technically over, but don't be surprised if you see new sound on our Camp Scally landing page before the first game. Just everything before the first game is basically camp. Right?
We'll give you as much as we can whenever we can. All right. 4 passes to the Utah State Fair coming up September 10th through the 20th at the Fair Park. I've got a trivia question for you. What have we been talking about today, guys? What's been a theme? What's been a major question on the show? Think about that. You'll probably get the answer right when we ask it next. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. 4 tickets to the Utah State Fair, September 10th through the 20th at the Fair Park. If you could answer this question, the Utah defense was able to generate how many sacks in the 2025 season? The total defensive sack production for the University of Utah in 2025. 877-353-0700. Tell me how many sacks Utah got on their opposition last year, and I will give you a family 4-pack to the Utah State Fair coming up at the Fair Park from September 10th through the 20th. Interestingly enough, the two teams that played the most games in the country ended with the most sacks. Miami and Indiana were the top 2 sack teams in the land, but Miami was number 4 in sacks per game. So even though they played like 3 more games than Utah did, 4 more games than a lot of teams did on their way to a national championship, Miami had a sacks per game rate of 3.13 sacks per game, 50 total sacks for the Miami Hurricanes last year. But the trivia question is, how many sacks did Utah's defense get in 2025? Interestingly enough, their total sacks ranking and their sacks per game ranking were identical when you break the sacks, when the sack stats get broken down. They were 23 in total sacks. They were 23 in sacks per game. Let's see where they were in sack yardage. 16th in sack yardage, so even better when it comes to that. Advanced Window Products offering $2,500 off 10 windows or more when you call them today, 801-850-9100. Do it now. Do it during the drive with Spence Checketts, but tell them you heard about it on ESPN 700 when you do. Hi, Spence.
Hello, Sean. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. I know the number. I will not say it. We'll wait for the winner.
We have the correct number in, so you can say it.
Did you do an over-under for the season today?
I did.
What is it?
29.5.
That's perfect, because I was thinking anything north of 30 feels like you'd be in a good spot, because they were second in the conference last year, right?
They were, yes.
Okay.
With 34.
Can they get to 30? I mean, what did John Henry Daly have 11?
11.5.
11.5. Who's going to be that guy this year?
Well, that's also a question on the poll today on the old tweet machine at Real OC Sports. Lance Holtzclaw, Ethan Day, Paul Fitzgerald, Cash Dillon. Is it somebody else that's not playing defensive end or that is playing defensive end that we haven't talked a lot about so far? And, asking for one of those guys to be a double-digit sack man. Paul Fitzgerald has the most in a single season of all those 4 guys.
Okay.
He had 8 at Utah State, 3 seasons ago.
Okay.
He hasn't stayed healthy with the University of Utah.
Yeah.
But can he get to that level? Lance Holtzclaw, who everyone is so incredibly high on, I think his best is a sack and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Ethan Day was a 7-sack guy at North Texas.
Yeah.
And Cash Dillon was 4.5 sacks.
I want it to be Cash Dillon because I just think that's a badass name.
That would if you get like 12 sacks and your name is Cash.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we can do with that from NIL front.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cash Dillon, you can either be a badass football player like the lead singer of a rock band.
Yes.
When I first heard this kid's name when they were recruiting him, I'm like, dude, I want Cash Dillon to play for Utah because that's just a cool name.
Cash with a K.
Yeah, it makes it even cooler. And also, we're in Utah. Of course, it's Cash with a K. You got to switch up the letter at some point.
Kyajsh, Cash.
What's the deal with names in our state? Like, we had a daughter. Her name is Mackenzie, and we're spelling it with a QU or something.
Yeah, I think it's because there's so many kids, and you got to try to differentiate somehow.
You know what? That's it. You just summarized a question I've had for years.
I really think that's what it is.
There are too many children, so even if we name you the same, we're going to spell it differently so you can stand out on your own.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
Cash Dillon with a K. Yeah, 34 is a big number. I mean, every time I sit down to do a little prep and then compare what we could see this year to what we saw last year, I'm kind of reminded that last year's team was so much better than I think most people consider just because we lost to, BYU and Tech, like the two big teams we needed to beat. we were unable to do that. But you look at the offensive line numbers, 4.3 yards per carry before contact is so beyond stupid. Led the country in that stat. That's by far my favorite stat from that offensive line.
It's a great stat.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then you see the sack totals, and you're like, that's a lot of sacks. 34 sacks is a lot of sacks. Second in the conference. And, with all the love that the skill position players get because they're the players that everybody knows, without the trenches last year, it's a problem. And I'm still approaching this with a tremendous amount of questions. I think Morgan's sound, I was listening to it on the way in today, was good. But for all the conversation, and understandably so, because in this medium you look for stories, and the stories that people want to hear about and talk about, the Witt thing was such a big deal, and Morgan as a first-year coach is so intriguing. None of this matters without players. None of this matters if these guys aren't ready to go. I was actually thinking about this through the prism of so the SEC and the Big Ten have introduced guidelines. It's not a ban on pro players, but they're threatening programs with serious sanctions and punishments if, like the Daquan Cook kid who got cut by Cleveland and Lane Kiffin's like, come play for me. And Lane today is arguing the legislation was put in place after he made the addition. I guess there are 2 players on LSU's roster. If the Big Ten and the SEC straight up ban pro players from playing in those conferences, should the Big 12 be like, hey, come play over here?
Well, reporting out there is that the Big 12 already held their vote, and they're just drafting the language now, and every team said no to the pro players. I think that we talked about that possibility. It would make you the outlier. The problem is the Big 12, you can't afford to be the outlier, because if the SEC and the Big 10 say no to something and then you say yes, they're like the big brothers that can slap you and say, we said no.
Yeah, that's true.
We're not playing you.
Yeah.
We're not playing against you. We're not scheduling out of conference games. You don't get to be part of our club where we have an automatic access for your conference champion to the college football playoff. The problem is they can punish the Big 12. Yeah. The Big 12 can't punish the SEC or the Big 10.
No. It's just trying to find a way to get the Big 12 to live in that same cul-de-sac, and adding a couple of tight ends that have been cut from the Browns probably isn't going to do it.
It's probably not it.
Yeah. It's man, it's such a wild time. Like the Nam Yakov story for Utah basketball. I was even doing more digging last night after the show, because when I saw the news, because I said this on air, I'm not sure I said this to you. When I had Alex Jensen on the show a couple months ago, off mic, he's like, I love my point guard. And it's this Yakov kid who was probably going to be the best player on that Utah basketball roster. And he's awesome. I mean, if you've seen any tape on him, he's a pro. Like, he was nearly drafted this year, barely on the outside. And he's 21. He's never played any college basketball. And they're telling, the walking line that I saw is they were saying he developed in Europe. Give me 10 minutes, I can pull up 50 players that are playing college basketball this year that developed in Europe. Like, where's the consistency? I think that's the only thing people want.
We were trying to figure out, how do you draw an equivalency? Because he's played 4 years of pro ball, high-level pro ball, but it's in Israel.
Right.
So the highest level league in Israel, is that the Missouri Valley Conference? Is that the SEC?
It's good basketball.
Is that the Big Ten, right? Like, there's so many different ways that you have to slice this onion when it comes to basketball, especially.
Yeah.
Because it's like, all right, well, he spent 1 year in New Zealand, but that's fine. We're going to let him play.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's been 4 years in Israel. That's too much for us. He's ineligible. This guy, BYU had a guy last year that was in the G League.
Yeah.
And he stunk for BYU.
Mm-hmm.
And now you got this Jackson Kohler kid who was – there's literally pictures of him wearing the Utah Jazz Mountain jersey.
Yeah, he was on the Summer League team.
He was on the Summer League team. And it's like, okay, but are a couple of Summer League games equivalent to a season, a half a season, 10 games in Israel? Like, it's really hard with basketball especially to say what equates to what.
Yeah.
And that's where you draw your line. So, interestingly enough, the language in the Big Ten sanctions and the SEC sanctions is specific to the WNBA, the NBA, and the G League. Doesn't really include Icelandic pro basketball.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah, it is tough, because then you get into these false parallels at times, like the Jackson Kohler kid who just committed to play for BYU, played 4 years under Tom Izzo at Michigan State. I would argue 4 years at Michigan State under one of the best college basketball coaches and potentially one of the best college basketball conferences is a better developmental process than 4 years in Israel. Honestly. And
I
also,
don't think anyone would dispute that.
Right. And also Jackson's 23, Yakov's 21. You know, in the college football ecosystem, one of the things that I think that you're trying to avoid is sometimes your freshmen are 17 or 18. And look, in the pros, the gap between a 25-year-old second-year player and a 32-year-old vet, it doesn't matter. But at that stage of both intellectual and physical development, the gap between 17 and 24, 25 is massive and could be dangerous. You don't have the physical danger in basketball that you have in football. But it's just this continues to be one thing, and it's so exhausting because I've talked about it for years. Everybody is now reaping the issues that were put in place by not having leadership see around corners 10 to 15 years ago. And as I've said, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Ed O'Bannon filed his lawsuit in 2008. That was 18 years ago. And anybody that followed that story saw that door crack open and said this could have far-reaching ramifications if you don't get in front of it. And they ignored it. And in 2026, we're still dealing with the fallout.
If they had ignored it completely, I think that would be criminal enough. What bothers me more is that somebody forced them to look around the corner that you're referencing, and instead of being like, all right, let's plan some contingencies here, they said, we're just going to hire lawyers and squash this.
Right.
The arrogance necessary to say, no, these dumb kids are always going to take their medicine and we're going to always have all of these billions.
Yeah.
And that's how it's forever going to be. Somebody literally put a lawsuit in front of them like, hey, this is coming. And eventually there's going to be a groundswell of support for this. And you better do something about it.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, oh, guys, look, we hoped it would never happen, but now it's happening. They were just like, nah, we'll just have better lawyers.
Yeah, and ultimately, you know, it's just the way life works. Change happens slowly and then all at once. So when the Supreme Court threw Mark Emmert and the NCAA out of court and said, you are a serial antitrust violator, go figure it out, there was nothing in place to protect these products. And we're still trying to deal with it today. And really, it became a reality 5 or 6 years ago. That's enough time to have more in place than they have now. And it's just, it's unfair. And yes, we're the home of the Utes, and I want Alex to succeed more than anyone. But, you know, Alex finally finds the guy that he thinks can at least get them to respectability in conference. Nobody's saying go beat Houston or Arizona or that's not realistic. But this was going to be their best player. And we're left to stomach that you're telling me 4 years in Israel is better development than 4 years playing for a top shelf coach in one of the best conferences in college basketball. It doesn't make sense. It's not consistent, and it's unfair. It's just tiring to yell about all the time.
All of which he was paid for, if I'm not mistaken, or eligible to be paid for?
Handsomely.
Who got more money, Noam Yakov or Jackson Kohler?
Text
Let
in.
that be the decision.
Text in.
877-353-0700. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. Big one tomorrow. We will have Devin Dampier, Dishing with Dev. We will have Eric Weddle. It's going to be a fun show. On a Thursday, as that starts the first weekend of college football. It's in FCS for Thursday and Friday, but still, it's college football. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.